Pastor's going to join us in just a second. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Brawley City Council and successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. Regular meeting for Tuesday, April 3rd at 6 p.m. And we'll have the roll call, please.
The council minutes will reflect all council members present.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the invocation by Pastor Mike Newchick of El Redentor Church. If you can please rise.
Lord, as we stand before you this evening, we thank you for this season of life, springtime in our valley, and at the same time we're stepping out of the celebration of your death and your resurrection. We thank you for it. And Lord, we ask you that you bring to death the things that need to die in our town, in our population, as well as bring to life businesses and projects and plans that are before our leaders in this town, that we may blossom, Lord God, like the spring flowers in this season. For we ask and pray all this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. Councilmember Catherine Howdy, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor, and thank you, Councilmember Catherine Howdy. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public appearances, comments. It's not to exceed 4 minutes. This is a time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Brawley City Council. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record. You're not allowed to make personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. Please direct your questions and comments to the City Council. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a public appearance or has a comment on any item not appearing on the agenda today? All right, seeing none. We will go on to the next item on the agenda, and that's item 3, scheduled presentations, and we'll start with the proclamation celebrating National Library Week in the city of Brawley on April 8th through 14th of 2018 by myself, here presented to the Library Board of Trustees. There's some backup material for the council to review. It's on pages 5 and 6. And I will have Marjo come up.
And we're fortunate to have 3 of our Library Board of Trustee members here tonight. We have Elizabeth Lorenzen, who's our president, Judy Grant, who is our secretary, and Crystal Duran, who is the most recently appointed member.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And there is a proclamation in honor of National Library Week. I'll read it for the public record. So in honor of National Library Week, April 8th through 14th, 2018, this is a proclamation. I'll read it out loud. Whereas libraries are not just about when we have for people, but what we do for and with people. Whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions, and library workers and librarians fuel efforts to better their communities, campuses, and schools. Whereas librarians are evolving in order to serve their communities and to continue to fulfill their role in leveling the playing field for all who seek information and access to technologies. Whereas libraries and librarians open up a world of possibilities through the innovative programming such as Lamb's Vehicle, free one-on-one assistance for adults who would like to improve their English language reading skills, classes for basic computer skills, job-seeking resources, and power of reading. Whereas libraries and librarians are looking beyond their traditional roles and providing more opportunities for community engagement and deliver new services that connect closely with patrons' needs. Whereas libraries support democracy and effect social change through their commitment to provide equitable access to information for all library users regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. Whereas libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, George A. Nava, Mayor of the City of Brawley, California, proclaim National Library Week, April 8th through 14th, 2018. I encourage all residents to visit the library this week and explore what's new at your library and engage with your librarian. Because of you, libraries transform. And I've signed it here and witnessed whereof I have unto set my hand in it and caused the seal of the City of Raleigh to be affixed on this 3rd day of April 2018. So this is also signed by our city clerk, Alma Benavides, and it's a proclamation I'd like to present to you. So thank you very much. So,
Do we get pictures?
we are going to get pictures. You guys all want to join over here?
Okay.
And we're gonna take a picture, but be very quiet because we're in the library now, so it's not.
If you've ever been there in story time, you know it's not a quiet place.
I've seen Sam Couch's be in the library. He's not very
Yes, he
quiet.
has.
All right.
Not necessarily
Let me present this here. and you can hold it. Yeah.
Oh, we're happy.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. The newest member? That's right. All right.
Okay.
Let's, and we can stay there if you'd like, and we can make a presentation. There's one that's up and coming.
And we'll get you one that has a barcode.
All right, thank you, and thank you again for the work that you do for our community and the public here. Mr. Ryan Kelly, all right.
Other good confused people.
All right. The next item on the agenda is again a scheduled presentation. Item 3B, Certificate of Appreciation presented to Maria Mercado, Library Aide, for 20-plus years of service to the Brawley Public Library. All right. So Maria?
I'm going to be Marjo's voice because.
Please come up. Please come up here.
This is the microphone.
We want you to know that this wonderful lady has worked at the Brawley Public Library for over 20 years. She was an IVC work-study student, a temporary barcoder, and has been a front desk aide for over 20 years. She occasionally fills in as a supervisor and has a strong institutional knowledge of the library. She has seen the library go from a 3x5 card catalog to an electronic catalog and gone through 2 vendor changes and upgrades. She was an integral part in the transition during the 2010 building upgrade. Since the Del Rio branch opened to the public in 2008, she has been the primary aide there as well as at the main library. She is bilingual with a phenomenal translation skills. She is truly dedicated with an internal nature to help people. Where's your son? And she brought us her son Leonardo Ibarra. He's a senior this year at BUHS, and he also shares his mother's ethic. He helps with story time, summer reading programs, and any time we need him. He even started at the age of 4, pushing the mobile trash can from the back of the building out to the front during the Angel Tea. He knew we needed it there, so he just did it. Mrs. Mercado has worked very hard and succeeded through many changes at the library. She has the right spirit to tackle whatever comes next. So, we have for you flowers, California.
There we go. All right.
Make all the farmers
Uh-huh.
happy. For you, that'll do at lunch.
Yeah.
And this is for you. Oh, thank you.
Maria, congratulations. Of course. And I have the certificate for you, Maria. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? We want to give you an opportunity to say anything you'd like. She's good. She says thank you. All right. Well, let's present this to Maria. She's used to working in the library. She's so quiet. You know what I mean? Congratulations. Congratulations. And congratulations to you as well. Let's get in here. Let's get a picture here in the center.
Okay, big smile.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Is that what you guys?
All right. So there's another library-related item on the agenda, and we'd like to address it as well. It's item 3C, under scheduled presentations, certificate of recognition presented to Juan Carlos Alvarez and Michelle Aguilar for reading 1,000 books before kindergarten to their children, Emma and Luna Alvarez. There we go. There we go.
And this is Javier Ray Katzenstein. He's a part-time supervisor, and he's in charge of this program. And he's going to read the speech I wrote.
All right.
Okay, so how much a child is read to before entering school has a direct effect on the school readiness and future school success of that child. Raleigh Public Library promotes the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program, and the city has its first graduates. Mr. Juan Carlos Alvarez and Mrs. Michelle Aguilar are being recognized for reading 1,000 books before kindergarten to their children, Emma and Luna Alvarez. Both come to the library and both read to their child. This the best modeling of what a child will do soon, read. They will see the way the parents hold the book, turn the pages, look at the pictures, and that the words read from left to right. These pre-literacy skills will help them be ready to read themselves. Within the program, the child earns a prize after each 100 books, culminating with a stuffed animal and books when 1,000 is reached. The Brawley Public Library would like to acknowledge the parents of all the hard work they put in with a gift basket and certificate.
All right, congratulations. One more visit down here, and let's take one last picture. Fantastic. Good job. All right. Well, Juan Carlos and Michelle, thank you very much. Congratulations to you. You're doing a great job. We appreciate it. Appreciate the citizens here. So let's take a picture. Sam, if you're nice enough, you might loan me that unicorn. Let's get over here. All right, congratulations. Great job. And good job for being active and listening.
Thank you again. You guys are so great. Love it.
Okay.
Thank you again and congratulations. Thank you for your effort. Yeah, fantastic.
They're still reading. Wow.
All right, we have one more scheduled presentation. No, I'm kidding. All right, so the next item, thank you again very much. We appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is regular business, discussion and potential action to award contract to George Mitchell Builders, Inc. for project number 2018-02, Senior Center Improvements Project, in the amount of $203,116.17. Authorize a 10% contingency for a total amount of $223,427.79, and authorize the city manager to execute all documentation in relation to this project. So,
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Guillermo Sillas, Public Works Director. As you have in your materials, the city solicited bids for this project. Due to the the city was recipient of a grant from the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development and received two proposals, being the lowest responsive, George Mitchell. So we are bringing this item to the council to ask for approval to award this contract to George Mitchell for the rehabilitation of the senior center, which includes several items like roof and ceiling rehabilitation, electrical rehabilitation, lighting, plumbing systems, and also appliances, as well as ADA improvements to the main access of the building.
All right.
Any questions that you might have?
Are there any questions from members of the council on this particular item?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, that I know we've discussed this project. It's been forthcoming, so we're obviously excited about it and very happy to see not only that we did have a couple of local bidders, but very happy to see the recipient being a Brawley business.
Been looking forward to this for a long time, so it's good.
Certainly. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations to George Mitchell Builders. I think they have a representative back there.
Is he here?
Congratulations. Thank you again. Next item on the agenda is regular business 5B, and that's discussion potential action to adopt resolution number 2018, resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, declaring an emergency, ratifying action taken by the city manager and approving emergency repair of a collapsed manhole on the south side of Shank Road between railroad tracks and Slider Road. There's backup material on pages 50 through 53.
Again, Guillermo Sillas, Public Works Director. During a routine inspection from Streets and Utilities Division, they discovered this manhole that was collapsed or partially collapsed. The top one-third of the manhole was down with the rim and cover, and they proceeded to retrieve those materials and did an inspection, and they realized that was in very bad condition. And so we requested quotes because this type of work is something that is very specialized and requires a specific material and equipment that we don't have on hand, plus it will distract the crews in this work that is, it's very critical because it's one of the main wastewater lines that conveys the wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant. So we requested to A&R quote and also another contractors that were unable to provide quotes. And the quote from A&R is attached to the material. And they are ready to start on Monday because they have to provide or need to get markings on the ground from Dig Alert, and it will take 3 days to do so. So they will start and finish on Monday. And so we consider as an emergency because the nature of the system and the importance of this pipe.
All right. Thank you. So are there any questions by council on this particular item? If not, is there a motion to approve? Actually, we can adopt the resolution on item 1 and 2, right? B1 and 2? Because that's
correct. So in order to accomplish the project,
Yeah.
this wasn't an anticipated expenditure, so we're asking for the council's authorization to use the enterprise fund.
Enterprise Fund, wastewater enterprise fund? Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. So is there a motion to adopt the resolution number 2018, that's B1 and B2, adopt the resolution making the expenditure from the enterprise
So moved.
fund?
I'll
Okay.
second.
There's a motion and there's a second for item 5, B1 and 2. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, All right, the next item on the agenda is regular business 5C, discussion potential action to approve a work authorization of the Holt Group, Inc. for Pilot Flying J Travel Center expedited plan check review services for off-site improvements in an amount not to exceed $25,000 with 100% cost recovery from the developer. Backup materials on page 59 through 60.
Members of the council, Mayor, as you are aware, this development is coming to the city of Raleigh and is on the process to provide a final map for approval. And they are also reviewing or under review the improvement plans associated with this map and requested expedited review because the importance of the project, and since we are the city's employees are tied up with some other projects, so we asked for authorization to contract a consultant to expedite this review. They exhausted almost the initial deposit, and we are coming to the council to ask for authorization for additional funds under this agreement to continue with the plan checking that will require probably one or two more rounds of plans review for Holt Group, which is the consultant that is doing the review.
So, with, just to clarifying, they did put a deposit of $15,000 with the city of Brawley. They've used a large portion of that. You're looking for authorization for the city to front the cost for the expedited review, and then it would be 100% cost recovery from the developer.
Exactly,
Okay.
right.
So it may not, I mean, it may be 12,000, 10,000, maybe 15, whatever.
This will
It
allow
will-
for continuous
Sure.
review with no interruption in the review process.
And I know that they're under a time constraint to get the plan. Is there any
So there
questions?
won't be any cost to the city?
No.
It'll be recovered?
Right.
Okay.
Well, initially there would be, I mean, but it's
But
going to be
it'll
recovered from the
later.
developer.
Okay.
Any comments, questions?
I'm just wondering why we have to front the money for their project.
Okay, normally the improvement plans, which are for the off-site improvements, the city staff would perform the review process. Because the turnaround times were going to be extended, they asked for a more rapid address. So they said, would the city be open to using an outside firm to review? We said yes. I collected a $15,000 deposit up front, and then we initiated the authorization under my signature. City manager has $15,000 of authority, and that's it. So as we've gotten through the iterative process, we've been paying the invoices. We keep in an accounting fashion the dollars on hand as a deposit and charge the Holt Group's invoices against it. So it's actually not general fund fronting. And as it stands with the last plan check review, we had approximately, it was either 1,300 or 1,700 remaining in the authorization. So the developer currently has the Holt Group's last plan check comment letter. They know DD&E is working on their resubmittal to the city. So once we have it, we fully expect that more than the dollars remaining will be necessary to get the final approvals in place. Last week when we posted the agenda, I reached out to Pilot Flying J and indicated to them that I will be requesting authorization because the $15,000 it's in excess of my authority. I can't sign a contract with the Holt Group and engage the city. They can't pay the Holt Group directly because they're reviewing on the city's behalf, not on the developer's behalf. So we met yesterday with Brandon Parks, the representative for the travel center. The check is in process. After tonight's authorization, what will occur is the paper trail will match that the city manager has the authority to engage the Holt Group to a not to exceed value of $25,000. That $10,000 we're expecting the check this week, and we haven't exhausted what's on hand yet, but so that it can be absolutely
seamless.
continuous. Where we're not the holdup, where I say to the Holt Group, I don't have authorization to pay you any further. Please put this on ice till I get the dollars approved. This will allow for continuous review. So as soon as DD&E submits, we'll have the ability to say to the Holt Group, please move forward with the third plan check review. So we're not actually expending. We'll be fully reimbursed.
Very well. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All those in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda is regular business 5D, discussion and potential action to authorize the temporary positions of code enforcement officer and communications associate on a 6-month basis. Adopt resolution number 2018 resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, amending fiscal year 2017-2018 City of Brawley budget for building inspections in the amount of $23,791, and adopt resolution number 2018 resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, California, amending fiscal year 2017-2018 City of Brawley budget for city manager in the amount of $23,791. Backup materials on pages 61 and 71, and Shirley Bonias, our personnel and risk manager, will present.
Honorable Mayor,
Okay.
council members, yes, sir. Shirley Bonias, Personnel and Risk Management Administrator. The council has requested these 2 positions be reviewed. We did have a former code enforcement officer back in 2009, 2010 through 2012. At that rate of pay was roughly $21.53 per hour in today's current scales. The cost for just wages and a laptop computer for the code enforcement would be $22,392 on a 6-month trial. Similar wages, I reviewed the web for communications associate or social media coordinator. Roughly the same wages were proposed on the website. And so if we move forward with this, of course with council's approval, it would suggest the pay scale be similar. These are temporary positions, so it does not include any CalPERS costs. There would be some sick leave due to California law, but no other benefits would be payable. But it is staff's recommendation, as well as the city managers, that we do have in progress, almost in the final stages of a building inspector. This would allow a 3rd person to handle code enforcement inquiries. We hope to have the decision and finalized by Friday this week, no later than Monday next week, which would give us an additional person on staff after background check and then giving notice to that person's current employment. Given roughly a 3 weeks, let's just say quickly would be a 3 weeks, by the end of April, we could have an additional building inspector, so we would have an interim building official and 2 building inspectors. Currently the interim building official is handling all code enforcement. The candidates are experienced, so it would help move this along quicker than a recruitment for a temporary position for code enforcement. There is currently no one on staff to actually dedicate full time to communications associate, and if we do move on this position, again, we would like to go through the budget process for that. But if we do move on this, I will also bring forward before that posting the social media policy. So we can have a policy in place.
Perfect.
And then we would just move on the recruitment after that, if we move on this sooner than the budget process.
Very well.
Any questions?
No, I just want to thank you for getting the information together for us. I know we have had a code enforcement official in the past, a code enforcement officer, so that was a little easier to gather information on, but certainly do appreciate the communications associate position information that you've provided, and I've reviewed both, and I think we're able to get this approved and filled. I think it's going to be a great benefit to the city, so thank you again for putting it together. Questions? Yes.
I have questions.
Yes.
Where's the funding going to come from for these 2 temporary positions?
The 6-month expense would be carried by the general fund reserve.
Okay, so this will come out of the reserve. Do we have to take action to reduce the amount of set aside for the reserve? Since we took action previous to this to reduce that reserve, I think in the last year's budget, Do we also need to take that same formal action to do this?
I did not prepare it for tonight's action in that fashion, but I do have in the backup and could be more explicit in the budget adjustment. If the council wanted to move forward, we can state in the reso attached that it's recognized that the general fund reserve would be the funding source, and that further reduction of the 15% set aside is involved.
Yeah, because I think we reduced that set aside to fund, I think, last year's budget, and we had it down to like 12% or something, like 11 or 12. 13% then, yeah. I just wanted to clarify that,
Sure.
that it is coming out of the reserve if we do take action tonight.
And it may not
And
have the impact. It may still, I mean, we still may
I
have
don't
the
know
13.
that.
Yeah,
So that's the question that I have.
Very well. Any other
Mr.
questions?
Mr. Mayor, just along that, not so much a question, but I think it's important also. So this has been discussed actually for quite a while, but it was something that we really highlighted as one of the takeaways from the strategy discussion as far as low-hanging fruit. And I know it's been echoed, but looking forward to this. But I do want to make the comment, kind of echoing a little bit of what Councilmember Couchman just mentioned about as we get through the budget process, I think we'll have some more, not just clarity, but we'll know exactly what the impacts will be to the general fund or, the said reserve, depending on how we kind of work through and navigate what the reality will be moving forward with the next upcoming budget. So I just want to put that comment out there, not just for the public, for also us on council. Just be mindful, we're just entering the budget workshop. So I think as long as the reso is reflective of that. But I think we made we had concurrence, at least high agreement on council, that these are definitely a couple areas we wanted to move forward on that I would certainly consider low-hanging fruit, something we can do immediate and make impact.
And while I'm in agreement with temporarily maybe hiring these positions and see how they go, and then we can kind of evaluate them as they go along, I also reserve the fact that if it does impact the budget in certain ways, I may not be in favor of hiring full-time positions for both of these positions when that time comes. I certainly want to reserve that. I may be in favor of attempting this temporarily. I don't know if people remember history on the code enforcement, but we did get a lot of complaints. We had a lot of issues that developed from that. So I think a trial period with a temporary person is probably a good thing, and then we can reevaluate during the budget cycle to see whether we really want to continue that or whether we don't. Same thing with the media specialist and whatever other positions that we may have in mind. I think that I'm reserving some judgment for the budget discussion, but I'm also somewhat in favor of trying it out and seeing how it goes.
Another comment?
Mr. Mayor, that somewhat along that line, I'm kind of concerned because we haven't really looked at our budget and addressed the positions that we are thinking of possibly backfilling or maybe new positions. So I personally feel that although we have been pretty much in agreement that we are interested in bringing on a code enforcement officer and social media person, I kind of feel like we need to address that first before we take any action to actually approve anything like this.
Understood. I would just say that with respect to regardless of what we do with those positions, whether they're, whether we don't backfill positions or whether we do, I think these are critical spots that need to be filled. So, a 6-month trial opportunity to see if those items are of interest and effect, I think is very important. I mean, we do have, and this has been discussed for years, quite honestly, issues with code enforcement throughout the community, especially in areas like downtown Brawley. We have an issue with the fact that we don't get information out to the public in a timely manner. So those are all things that really have to do with some of the constraints that we have within the city, and I really do want to make sure that we address them. Now, I know there's other ideas to get the city up and running, but these are really kind of vital positions to make sure that the other things fall in line too. So, and again, it's a 6-month trial. I think it's worth giving that some consideration and seeing how effective they can be.
Just a quick couple notes for you to consider as part of the discussion. We are still trying to work through our vehicle assignments. We do know when we bring on our new building inspector, which we're anticipating in the month of April to come to a total conclusion, that we're short of vehicles. So with reference to the code enforcement officer, we've got a second vehicle need. And I did not factor that into this item, so I'll be coming to you later with some type of a fleet-based solution. Code enforcement officer can probably more readily drive a different type of vehicle than a building inspector, but both
Correct.
need to have kind of official appearance, given the nature of the assignment. I also want to note with reference, just because of where we are in the fiscal year, the 6 months would be based on tonight's action and then roll us through a portion of the new fiscal year. So we build it, those 6-month expenses into July 1 to whatever remains of that period, just so
Very well.
you're aware.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple comments regarding the code enforcement. Clearly it's something that we desperately need in Brawley, but I am interested in what Shirley Bonias has said about the new building inspector being able to handle some of those job descriptions, and I don't know, maybe Oscar may have to fill in some of the gaps here, but do we know if is there a backlog with inspections currently, or is another building inspector going to take care of all of that plus have some free time to do some code enforcement?
I'm going to ask Oscar to come up to answer that, please.
Mayor, council members. We have a backlog. It continues because we get code enforcement calls on a daily basis. It's a process of letters that we send to notify them of the complaints. We ask for, we give them a period of time to respond to the letters, and if they are not responding, we send a second letter. We give 3 letters out to the final, that's our final letter that we're going to send, and then it would be considered as something we'd send to legal through an LSR. So with a new building inspector that we would hope to bring on here soon, part of that work we would probably be, I'm taking care of it myself right now, but I'd like to try to give a little bit more work out on that department as far as code enforcement.
And I should mention, let me interject as well, I'm sorry to do that, but the type of work that a building inspector does and the type of code enforcement that they do is very different than an actual code enforcement officer, where they're actively going to go engage the person and talk to them and work through and resolve the issue, and likely much faster than a letter would. And so the type of work that's being performed, although it's both official and it's coming from the city of Brawley, that is not the primary responsibility of the building inspector. So it's just, I want there to be clarification in that regard too. So I think that's really important to recognize. So
I think it's an important point. And then regarding, thanks, Oscar. Regarding the communications associate, I think this is a matter that probably warrants some more research. I think Rosanna has, maybe Shirley, has made known some concerns about the CJPIA recommendations and social media policies that they might have. I think there's some concerns about when someone has access to and passwords for these platforms and accounts, if they become disgruntled or fired for some reason, they can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time before that can be mitigated. So I know that there's probably a pretty heavy vetting process that has to happen with someone like that. Would that be your understanding? Or?
To a degree, yes, sir. CJPIA, our insurance authority, is more concerned about Brown Act violations and other avenues that we could go down if not monitored on a consistent basis, that we don't have somebody dedicated. Social media policy was actually, I prepared one for council a couple years ago, but what it stopped is it keeps on referring within the policy that the social media coordinator will be monitoring. The social media coordinator will log in every 2 hours or whatever. So we didn't have a name to plug. We didn't have someone. I am the ADA coordinator on top of my other duties, but Rosanna can't take on this additional duty because it is an 8-hour day.
Right.
So that's the only reason why the social media policy would be in place. Now, how does the city handle inquiries? When is the city going to respond? How long is that posting going to be on? That's what a policy. They want the policy so it's consistent, everybody's treated fairly. That's it's not so much the person doing the work, although background checks are done on all employees, DOJ, all that is consistent, and this person would have the same background as any other clerical staff. But the focus of the insurance authority is mostly in consistency, sticking to the policy, consistent monitoring, consistent messaging, and making sure nobody's in violation of any of the laws.
And you say you have created that policy or have?
There's a template. California Joint Powers has many templates of policies that I can access free of charge. So yes, that this item, if so directed, I'd be more than happy that I could prepare it for the next council meeting.
Right, and just so I understand, if we approve this item today, it's going to come before council for final approval, right?
The action that you would be taking tonight is amending the budget.
Right.
So we basically move forward with with authorized positions and recruit as we would normally.
Sure.
And with reference to the policy, we would just ensure that there is ample time for the council to act on the policy in advance of the individuals or the individual taking on the work.
Let me ask this question. If we were to decide to approve these items, approve these two positions on a temporary basis, how soon can you get the postings out?
Code enforcement officer, I can work on that tomorrow. Just prioritize it to the front of the line. Because I have a job description I can work off of. That's pretty easy. I don't have a job description that's been approved by the city manager quite yet. What you have in your packet is a draft. I tried to get something together, what I saw on the internet, what I thought your thoughts were.
I thought it was well put together. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So once I get that finalized through the city manager, then I'll be able to post.
And another question, with respect to the time frame, what does it typically take for between the time it's posted and applications received and closing and the person's onboarded? What is that?
I usually place them at least one cycle in the paper, so I at least get at least one Sunday reading.
Okay.
I think with these two positions being that they're temporary, no benefits, I'm not going to be pulling any full-time people away from their current full-time jobs. I would suggest to the city manager to run a 2-week, 2 Sundays. It would go on CalJobs. It would go on our website. It would go on America Jobs just to get it out there for the least amount of cost and see what type of applications we get back in. Just because we get an application in, it doesn't mean it meets our criteria.
Correct.
So we might have to reopen and try it again.
Very well.
So it all depends. But to answer your question, I would leave it posted for at least 2 weeks. So we're looking at the end of April to finally receive applications, review the applications, and see if we have a viable pool.
Yeah, most of the time I think it's about 30 days, but under the circumstances.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. So with respect to this discussion and action item, is there a motion to approve the item? If not,
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion as recommended, but with, as Councilmember Couchman mentioned, consideration for the alternatives that have been set forth by the city manager for funding. But I do want to move forward with the motion and just leave that caveat in our motion as we work through the budget process. If we as council will reserve the right to make a different determination if we find that we ultimately don't want to move forward. But I want to move forward tonight so we can start this process. And so
just to clarify,
move forward, but with the caveat of the budget.
Move forward with the resolutions, but amend them to reflect a general fund expenditure.
Yeah.
And a further modification of the general fund reserve preservation policy.
Correct.
Which was brought up.
I think we have to.
If it's necessary, right?
If necessary.
If it's necessary.
That's what I was trying to say. Unless we make further adjustments within our budget, that it may not be necessary.
So there's a motion. Do you want to recap your motion just to make sure it's clear for everybody, Mayor Pro Tem Warren?
My motion is to move forward as recommended to consider the alternatives based on our financial constraints as presented in our packet, and if needed, to make the adjustment to the general fund reserve.
Gotcha.
Is there a second to that? I'll make a second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Questions?
Yeah, just a couple things. I think that when we do this, and if we do vote to do this, I think we need to take a look at both of those things somewhat separately and not say lump them all together. I think we look at a code enforcement, then we look at the communications coordinator or the communications associate. And I think what we need to do is look at those on an ongoing basis. And we look at the code enforcement officer might be a fairly, I don't want to say too simple, but it's something that's straightforward that we know that we can hire. On the communications associate side, I think that we need more discussion. When we can open up the applications, but I think we need more discussion about that person, the qualifications, and what we receive as a temporary employee and as a temporary position. And so what I'd like to see us do is maybe revisit this once we get your process done. If we advertise and everything, that we revisit this and we take a look at this and see if that's the way we really want to go or not at that period of time. And that'll give us time for budget discussion too, I think.
And there is a policy that would be coming to us prior to the actual start of the position, so I think that would help.
Right. I think we need to vet that position even more than, say, we vet a code enforcement officer, simply because it is a little bit more of a specialized position, and it may require an expertise that we may not receive on a temporary 6-month basis. And so I just would like to take a closer look at that as we move forward on this.
Just so I'm clear on the point that you're making, you're referring to the policy or you're referring to the job description?
I'm referring to both of those things, and we'll get a chance, I think, to look at both of those things. What I'm talking about is when we receive applications, and as Shirley and maybe yourself or whoever we go through to look at those applications, we may need to make the decision that we don't hire that position based upon those applications that we receive, and we may want to go back out and rethink both the job description and the policy based upon what we're receiving in terms of application. And we may want to go a different way, or we may decide not to hire that position at the present time. And so that's my whole thing behind that. I think in code enforcement, I'm pretty much very aware of what that's going to take and who we might get. And we may get somebody that's retired or willing to work part-time. When we talk about a communications position, I think that's a much more detailed position, and it's going to require more vetting for that.
I have read the draft communications associate position. I think it covers the items that the City Council has addressed, and those are, the representative duties, manage the city's social media presence, assist in coordination with media outreach, including PSAs, media inquiries, photography, and all of the other things that we have described. So I think it's fairly thorough. It may need some revision to it, but I think overall it addresses the things that we have discussed for quite some time now. So I would like to see that, move forward.
Mr. Mayor, is it possible that maybe we should take each one separately?
Well, it's on the agenda as one discussion potential action item. There is a motion, there's a second. So we could do that now.
Could take my motion back.
Just as a point of clarification, because the line items that are amended are 2 different cost centers, I actually have listed 2 separate resolutions.
Okay.
Take them individually.
I'm in agreement. I would like to see those separated, and I would like to have a little more time to research the social media communications associate.
I know we've talked about this. This is a 6-month position. It's a trial basis, and my point to everybody here is that we continue to kick things down the road and we don't take action on things. And we're elected to make decisions. And sometimes they're uncomfortable, sometimes they're risky, but we need to make sure that we do that. And so that's the reason why they've been put on the agenda for discussion and for potential action. And, I've been here on council a long time. I have seen many decisions be kicked down the road and then essentially forgotten after time. So I don't want that to occur tonight, and I just would make one last push to make sure that the items that we all have addressed collectively on the City Council, which are code enforcement, that's one item. That's the reason why it's on the agenda. The other one is the fact that we lack a social media presence, and we have a difficult time communicating what is transpiring within the city. Those are being addressed tonight. So we have an opportunity to do it at a 6-month trial basis and to see if we have success with that. I think it's a limited investment to see how effective those items can be. So that's, go ahead.
I appreciate that fact. I did not ask for them to necessarily be separated as a motion. What I asked for us to do is, if we pursued and approved that motion, was to take a look at both those positions, but especially the social media position, before we make a hire. That's the only thing that I'm really asking for, is to look at that before we make a hire. I don't mind us advertising them. I'd like to see what kind of interest that we have for the position, and then we can make a decision whether we move forward with a hire or whether we don't, whether we table that based upon budget, whether we table that based upon the pool that we receive in terms of applicants. We can make a lot of different decisions on that. I did not mean to separate necessarily the motion, although that may be the wish of some of our fellow
That's what
council
I
members.
recommend.
I did not necessarily mean for that to occur, but what I meant to occur was that we'll go ahead and pursue this and move forward with it if we approve this, and then what we would do is take a look at this before we make the hire. I'm not as concerned with the code enforcement, although I think that's going to be a major concern for us once that happens. But I'm not as concerned with the applicants for that. I am concerned with the social media and the person that would be in charge of that. So I think it's very important that we have the right person in there. And it's very critical that their skill level is appropriate for what you're asking to do based upon the job description. So that was my concern, was just to take a look at the time when the hiring begins.
Well, I would just make the argument that we don't do that with any position. They don't come before council. So for us to interject ourselves in a hiring process, I think, is also goes against everything that we've done here. So I'm not sure if there's a method for us to be able to do that. I'll refer to Shirley Bonias.
By Muni Code, the appointed authority is the city manager. If there is concern about the pool, my guidelines are the job description. So if there's anything the council sees in the job description that you would like to add, I would be more than happy to add it into the job description. The applicant wouldn't be necessarily hired because we get a pool. The pool's got to be viable. They have to meet the minimum qualifications. If the person's work history is right, if everything seems to line up, then there's a process of interview, possibly a writing test just to make sure they can write the written word. Those type of items would be tested before the city manager would be.
And maybe a way to maybe assist in the decision tonight, if we were to add maybe some suggestion as to requiring maybe a panel of local social media experts or media professionals to assist in the interview process, that might help to.
That's probably who we would use anyway. As part of our selection panel, our PIOs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think I think we also depend upon the recommendation of the city manager as she reviews the applicant pool as we go through the interview process.
The city manager does not review the applicants. It's removed from the city manager, the process, until the panel has a recommendation.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. She'll look at the recommendation, but she can say to us, I don't want to hire that position.
That's correct, sir.
And so that's all that I'm saying. That's the process that we follow, and that's the process that we go through. If we find that the applicant pool, even if we go through an interview process and everything, but we find that the applicant pool doesn't fit the job, it's her responsibility to tell us, I recommend that we don't hire this position. We go out again for another application process or whatever, and then we move forward from there. So that's all that I'm not asking for anything I don't think we already do. I'm just saying that I would like to go through that very thoroughly before we get to that point.
It's always unfortunate when after a recruitment process you have no viable candidates at the back end, but sometimes it's the difficult position that the agency finds itself in, and I have no reservations being straightforward with the council. If we're unable to find qualified candidates, coming and letting you know we're going to have to go back out, we're going to need to consider maybe a different compensation or a different set of requirements or any number of changes.
And I think that's what I'm looking for. I think for that position particularly because of the nature of the position.
Very well. Any other comments or questions?
Yes. If this is our only involvement at this stage, this is the council's only involvement with this position, I would really like to have a policy and a job description that is much more narrowed and refined than what we have now, which is vague because you only had a certain amount of time to put it together, and there's no.
I don't think it's vague at all. I think it's very descriptive. I mean, if you look at the position description, it is defined. We do have a social media policy in place, and then with respect to, the policy, that's ultimately going to be up to us. And so whether that person is hired now or is hired, 6 months from now, it's still ultimately up to the city council to decide how that policy is enforced. So,
I would, obviously I'm sensing that, there's maybe, and it varies on experience and perspective again. So we've discussed this many years, but with respect to our council as a whole, I understand if it's better to table this, I'm willing to rescind. In the interest of time, I would like to see this move forward. I wholeheartedly believe as a council we're going to move forward on these because we've all expressed that desire, at least in one form or fashion. But if need be, if one additional meeting is what it takes, I'm willing to rescind that motion, and I say bring it back at the next meeting, and we'll move forward there. So hopefully we can refine that a little bit more, buy us a little bit more time. I do want to comment on the vagueness. There are items that get put on the regular business that have virtually no backup material. So for someone to say that something it needs to be more refined. So I do want to point that out.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I just also wanted to comment that the reluctance that I have is that we're in the process of addressing all our budget items, and I feel that we needed to address what actual budget items and funding for positions we're going to consider and possibly include this, but I feel like we're doing this before we actually look at the overall picture of what we're going to do with our budget for personnel, and that's coming up very, very soon. So that's my discomfort with it also.
And I think we're in full agreement. That's why we kept the caveat is ultimately pulling the trigger and moving forward by filling positions. It can be a lengthy process. This opens the door for us to move. But as we've all mentioned, we always reserve the right to either hold, freeze, or not move forward on a position. So with that being said, I think at this time maybe it's best that I'll rescind my motion, and I'm of the thought that we bring it back at the next meeting. So if there is any refinement or questions that can be answered, that I do think we need to bring it back before the council at the next meeting, and then we make a decision to either move forward or not move forward.
All right. And so is there a motion to authorize the temporary code enforcement officer position? I'll separate those so there's an opportunity to discuss. Is there a motion to approve that item?
I'll move on that.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for a temporary position of code enforcement officer for a 6-month basis. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. The item with respect to the communications associate is tabled until for decision at our next council meeting.
So at the next council meeting, is it council consensus that you'd like to see a more refined job description and the social media policy?
How about a instead of a draft policy, a finalized policy, or excuse me, job description and a
draft social media policy.
Social media, but considering that it's also involving other public communication methods, it shouldn't, be broad enough to include those. So, all right. Next item on the agenda is let's talk about something with no backup material. Let's see. Discussion and potential action to establish a downtown ad hoc committee.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Hamby.
General considerations for the downtown ad hoc that I'm proposing is several items that a small committee could work on and do the heavy lifting on. Researching ways to encourage occupancy, studying small town, downtown revival best practices, an issue that I've touched on before, pigeon abatement and population control, blight mitigation, beautification, events, working with Chamber of Commerce, engaging with public on a regular basis, compile a list of all the property owners facing Main Street in the 4-block area, recommend aesthetic standards for downtown area, help to organize beautification, such as planters, flowers, small signage, etc., and review the 400-plus pages of Main Street downtown specific documents that are about a decade old now. Those are some of the I think the reasons and the needs to have a downtown ad hoc committee, and that's why I'm proposing it.
what specifically would the ad hoc committee work on? I know you mentioned a number of potential items. Is there a particular item? Because quite honestly, those are all issues that we deal with on council, so I'm not sure if a ad hoc committee can address all of those items, and many of them we're working on now. So is there a particular area of interest that you would want to form, and who would form this ad hoc committee?
Well, I would, as I said before in another meeting, I would like it to consist of at least myself and Council Member Kastner-Howdegi. A lot of it has to do with researching what we already have in the way of plans, downtown-specific plans, Main Street plans, documents, renderings that we already have, and figure out what is feasible for the very near future and figure out ways to make those happen. Working with, if there's going to be a process for hiring a code enforcement, or at least once that code enforcement officer is hired, if there's any work collaboration that needs to be done between this committee and that code enforcement officer, that would be part of this description within this committee. Those are the two, I think, the main focus of the Downtown Ad Hoc Committee.
So it would consist of council members, and I think any time we're engaging with employee staff, and it just becomes very muddied in that case. But I was under the impression that you wanted to form a committee to address a particular topic, not a broad sense of issues, that really comes before council. So is there not a particular item that you would, for example, one could be whether that's, because I don't think we do have an approved, we used it with the RDA, but like a preferred color scheme that we have.
We have an item that we brought to council for life after the RDA, where the council approved a palette, a color palette.
The color palette, okay. So we have those items. Is there anything else, any questions from council with respect to this particular topic, or any suggestions on how this could be? Who else would be on the ad hoc committee? Would it just be the two council members?
Or would there be other?
Well, no, that was another part of the discussion, that we might include somebody else from the community also on the ad hoc committee. But if we needed to address, like, say one thing, maybe we could just say blight mitigation, because that's a pretty general subject. But I mean, it would be easy to start there with blight mitigation, and work in conjunction with the code enforcement.
Everything that I've listed here has to do specifically with downtown, issues that we have downtown.
So and first and foremost, thank you, Councilmember Hammond, for bringing this. I think not just this, and obviously there's high agreement, on this discussion. The only thing the questions I have that I wanted to pose were, these are council issues, all of them, every single one of them. And actually, most of the things that you've mentioned there, not only action has been taken, improvements have been made. There are many more plans, as discussed in the strategy workshop, that are already up to and including the item that we just voted on, just code enforcement. What I'm having a hard time discerning, it's a very broad topic when you say Main Street. It's almost like saying I want to form an ad hoc committee to improve the city. That's really the work of the council. So everything you mentioned, you can do as a council member without forming a committee. And everything there we can do, I think it's incumbent between all 5 council members that we're focused on every single one of those issues. So typically when you form an ad hoc committee, first and foremost, it's highly unusual to self-appoint. It's typically a mayoral, step, and I'm not saying that, it's okay, we could do that. So it's a little bit unusual to self-appoint. And then secondarily, it's usually focused on a very specific objective, kind of with a beginning and an end. For example, when National Beef was considering selling or vacating the current beef plant, that took some concerted effort on not just a part of the city, but several stakeholders and agencies in the county. Hence, an ad hoc committee was appointed to see that through start to finish, one topic. So that's the only thing I'm troubled with. It's just, I think in spirit of it all, it's fantastic. I mean, not an issue. And I think that's what we're getting at. Is there a specific within the specific that you're looking at, or taking on the whole issue? I think it's a council issue. We're addressing many of the topics that you brought up, and I don't think it should be something that's necessarily held and owned by, necessarily 2 council members. I think it involves all of council.
Sure. And obviously, as with any ad hoc, you're putting together recommendations and then bringing it to council for approval, or what's the next step. And clearly, as with code enforcement, we're in a crisis of a certain kind in downtown, and we all field questions, concerns, complaints from community members and business owners about the fact that we're spinning our wheels in many aspects downtown. And so if you want to narrow it down to blight mitigation and reviewing the 400 plus pages of downtown specific and Main Street plans that we already have, great, we can narrow it down to that. But my feeling is that while we have seen some improvements, we've seen a few businesses go in, what we have is an eyesore that has been there for 7 years, 10 years.
So 10 years ago, it wasn't, and it is now? I disagree.
It's gotten worse.
I think it's
since the arson.
It has not gotten worse.
Been in pretty. I think it's an original, almost since the inception of the town, it as unfortunate as it may be, I think we need to continue the work we're doing. So again, I laud the work. I'm asking, why does it have to be within the confines of just 2 council members? I think that's is something that we need to echo and continue to focus on as a total council. So recommendations can come from all of us.
Right. And I would encourage you, to really, it takes a long time to get acclimated to council. It does take a long time. It took me, quite honestly, about 3 years to feel comfortable in the shoes that I was in, and it wasn't overnight. And so I would just say, engage yourself with the business owners, engage yourself with the community stakeholders. I know you've been doing that, but bring those recommendations back to council. There's a reason why I put so many items on the agenda, whether I'm mayor or not. I bring items to council for action, for address. Sometimes, there's votes in favor, and sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it needs clarifying information. But if you do have recommendations, specific recommendations, for example, you talked about pigeon abatement. If you have that, then bring it to council with some backup material, because right now it's just a line item on our agenda with nothing to really consider for us to consider. So it makes it very difficult, because I know there are open-ended questions that we don't have answers to. So I would just encourage you, and any council member, we all engage ourselves. When Inferno was being built, as an example, I don't know how many times I physically went there and, dealt with the developer person to person just to assist and get them, back to a place where they felt comfortable. And so it's just engaging the public. As recently as, a few weeks ago, going down to 6th Street and visiting with the business owners and getting that agenda item on for council consideration. It's not something I did by myself, but it's just those sorts of steps that we take. So if there are items that you'd like to see on the agenda to be addressed, I think they can quickly and easily be, that can be addressed in that manner. But I'm not sure if this broad approach that really involves all of council and city staff and everybody else, and it's very broad to say, let's move forward with an ad hoc committee, because I don't know if there's a defined role for the ad hoc committee. We did have a business advisory council, and we didn't have a lot of success. It took about a year to get the positions filled, and there wasn't a lot of interest. I know a lot of people will make comments, and many times they're negative comments about the city and how things aren't developed. But when it comes time to participate and engage, we just weren't getting the participation and engagement from the business community. So, and oftentimes it went, for lack of a quorum. They'd meet and they didn't have a quorum, so they really couldn't take action. But again, if there's a defined role for the ad hoc committee and there's a specific target for the work that it would like to serve, I'm all ears. But I also would like to have a much broader. For example, if it was something to address blight, and we were going to involve 5 community members as part of that ad hoc, I think there'd be greater
aesthetics improvements,
exactly, something
down
like that,
to core. Just take
where we're actually
topic.
Engaging downtown business owners and others. I think that could be more a greater benefit to all of us. That's just a matter of opinion. But any other questions with respect to this particular topic?
So what do you think would be the downside to having an ad hoc committee, whether it consists of 2 council members or 2 council members and a couple of community members? What would be the downside to, it's a
clear scope. Just a clear, defined scope of what the objective is. Otherwise, if it's broad, it's hard to measure.
Sure.
It's hard to, what are we bringing back? Is it ongoing forever? Is it so where's the beginning? Where's the end?
Mm-hmm.
What's the focus so that we can bring measured recommendations that are actionable.
Sure.
And then at that end, whether it's continuing or coming up or picking another topic, we go from there. But again, my assertion is it's a council issue across
absolutely.
the board. So nothing's to stop you from doing this right now. You don't need to form a committee to do it. But that would be my only thing. If you move forward with a committee, I would have a very specific focus and what that topic is, and then it's something that could be addressed relatively efficiently, and quickly versus having honestly multiple and myriad of items there, because where does it end? Where does it begin, and what do you measure?
And truly, there's so much overlap within each one of these subject matters. When you deal with blight, you're dealing with aesthetics and beautification. So there's a lot of it that overlaps. So would you like to see a time limit on it?
I'd like to see something more defined. Look, what you're describing is things I'm already doing. It's things that Donnie's already doing. It's things that Sam's already doing. What you're describing is nothing new. I mean, I hate to put it in those terms. It's just, it's going to take your engagement as a council member to realize that. It's really going to take, if you have items you want to bring to the city council, bring them. If you want to get them on the agenda for consideration by council members, bring them. And that's how things get discussed. But you have to also bring backup material. In this case, and it's been, in the last meeting or the meeting prior to that, there was 8 or 7 other items with no backup material. It was just a line item, and there's nothing to identify the issue or seeing how they can be addressed. So, essentially they're just going to be pushed off until there's something more defined. So my statement to you is, if you're looking to gain support for an ad hoc committee, it does have to have a defined role, and the role has to be very specific. Otherwise, it's just the work that the council's doing in general, and quite honestly, city staff is as well. So I hate to make that comment in a public setting to you, but it is what everyone's doing. So when you're saying what objection do we have, well, when you are assigning 2 council members to speak and work on a multitude of issues, on behalf of the council, because that's what you're asking for support from the council to assign 2 people to address these issues, and working with staff. It shouldn't be that 2 council members, are, directing staff to do anything, or even working with the code enforcement officer, because that's not our role. And so the role is really working with the building official and working with the city manager. And so I would just like to see something more defined. If you have for a particular topic you would like to address, I think you can bring that forward, and it can be considered by the city council. If it's pigeon abatement, or if it's reviewing our code enforcement policies and how that affects things in downtown, I think we can address those things. But again, going back to the comment that Mayor Pro Tem Wharton had made, which was we need to measure that. We need to see, does that last for a period of 90 days, 60 days, or is it something that you're looking to do for an extended period of time? That hasn't been that hasn't been defined yet. So I guess the question's back in your hands too. What is it that, how do you see this ad hoc committee interacting with city staff and the city council, and how long would you like to form this for?
I would like it to be around for as long as it takes to get some action done as far as what everyone sees when they drive through downtown. I think getting input from business owners and community members that have a real concern for downtown, compiling that along with what we have for plans already, and presenting that to council in a way, in an official capacity that says, here are the steps that we think we need to take. What do you think about this? It's...
But you can do that now as a council member. That's my statement to you. But you can do that now. You can get in official capacity. You can get it on the agenda. That is part of your responsibility as a council member. And so doing the work, we all interact with a different set of people, all of us here. And so I know there's overlap, but we all interact with a separate group of people, which represents the entire community. So if there is input that you're, getting from a select group or whatever it is, and there's a particular item of interest to them that they'd like to see addressed by the city, then bring that to the city council and address it. But I understand
the feeling behind the desire to have it. I'm just telling you that that's the work that's being performed now. So when you're making statements like, as long as it takes, well, how do we know as long as it takes when we're not sure what the role of the ad hoc committee truly is? You see what I'm saying? It makes it very difficult to gauge. But I'm just telling you, you have the opportunity now. You've put this item on the agenda. I would just encourage you, if there is a particular topic of interest or even this item, it just doesn't have any backup material. There's nothing to reference other than the statements you've made here. And for us to decide something, it just makes it very difficult. So, I mean, that's just my statement, and that's my opinion. Everybody else may have a separate opinion on the item. So,
one prior example that comes to mind that might be helpful to the process, when the Business Advisory Committee was established by the council. It was prior to me arriving in 2011, but I know we did actually revisit the resolution a couple of times because it had a very specific time frame. Unfortunately, the city was unable to attract all of the people into all of the seats. It actually, I think it took much longer than a year.
Yeah.
But the reso was modified on a number of occasions. Maybe that's one framework to provide Councilmember Hamby with, so that you can see how it was previously formed, the way it had a stated intent. Some things didn't work about it, some things did. It was challenging to get the same level of working knowledge among the committee members. So it was more of an outside body with some council representation, but maybe it's a template to look to that give you some ideas on how to structure it if you wanted to have a future item come to the council. That's one suggestion.
Any other comments?
Well, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, actually, and so I think we could work together and review that. I'm familiar with the Business Advisory Committee resolution, and that might be a place to start, and then be more specific about an item possibly, and see what community members might be engaged, and we could take a look at it. I'm willing to do that. Luke, up to you.
Very well. So, in agreement that we'll consider this at a later date with backup material. Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is request for dedication of 45% of transient occupancy tax (TOT) revenues to Brawley Chamber of Commerce for 3 years by Katie Luna, Executive Director. Backup materials on pages 72 and 75 through 75. I'm sorry. Ms. Luna, how are you?
Good evening. Katie Luna with the Brawley Chamber of Commerce. I have a presentation for you here. So thank you, Mayor, Council, for giving us this opportunity to present here today. We're presenting, I'm presenting tonight with the hope that direction will be given for the amount to be forecasted into the budget for this coming cycle, and then consecutively for the 3 years that's being requested. I'd like to thank my board members and ambassadors and chamber members who are here in support of our request, and a great big thank you to those who came together to make this presentation possible tonight. So I'm going to give you a short presentation, and then I've asked 3 members, 2 of which are here, to provide just a 1-minute insight to some of the work that we're doing with them, so it kind of gives us a full picture of the importance of the chamber and the work that we're doing in a full scope. I've taken the assumption with this presentation that not everyone knows what we do, so forgive me, Council, if it's a little repetitive for you, but it kind of lays the foundation, or it does lay the foundation for everyone in the room. I want to encourage everyone to keep in mind that tonight I'm not up here just as the Executive Director for the Brawley Chamber of Commerce, but really as a representative of the 339 businesses that are members of the Chamber that we support. So the underlying message of it all is that our community is ready for the growth that we're going to propose. So what is the Brawley Chamber of Commerce? The Brawley Chamber of Commerce is a 501c6 nonprofit brought together in 1904 as a hub for business for business transactions. Businessmen organized the chamber with the principle of making the economic day-to-day life easier and better for the residents. While this same principle is true today, the IRS identifies chambers of commerce in a nonprofit class with activities that must be devoted to improving business conditions of one or more lines of business. It further states that the Chambers of Commerce direct their efforts at promoting the common economic interests of all commercial enterprises in a trade or in a community. Keeping this definition in mind, I'm happy to report that today we have 339 members. I'd also like to make note that football leagues fall under this, professional football leagues fall under this classification.
Any specific one?
Nonprofit, right? So we have 339 members. Delay, there we go. Last year, we hit a monumental milestone by adding 44 new members to our chamber family. This equates new member growth to 230%. It's the most we've seen in over 10 years. Our mission lies in our founding principles. We are here to create a strong local economy, to promote the community, provide networking opportunities, and to represent the interests of business with action. All our activities, everything we do, can be traced back to one of these mission statements that we have here and our 4 main principles, which we'll talk about. So why are the businesses joining the Chamber? Simply put, it's for opportunity. The Chamber of Commerce, intrinsic to its nature, is an opportunity provider. Throughout the years, our activities may have changed, but the one thing that has always remained the same is that we have provided the business members and the community an opportunity to conduct business and grow. At the Chamber, we have 4 core values that all our activities must fall under for them to be relevant to our mission. The 4 core values are connection, promotion, education, and advocation. Most everyone in this room today knows the Chamber of Commerce brand through its core value, connection. We provide or facilitate the opportunity for business members and community members to connect. These opportunities take the form of mixers, events, and using the Chamber as an informational exchange and a resource hub. Our promotional core value is essential for our community because it gives us the opportunity to shout the praises of the hardworking individuals here. Promotional activities are carried out in print media, digital media, social media, and word of mouth. We have garnered recognition from many, including the State Board of Equalization, for our By Brawley video. Education is a vital core value, and we believe that businesses need to be informed of the latest and the greatest. This is an area that can serve the city well. The more opportunity for our businesses to learn the city operating regulations, the easier it will be for everyone. Lastly, a huge benefit of being a chamber member is advocation. We are a resource advocate for our members, and we believe protecting and preserving their rights is essential. In short, the Brawley Chamber of Commerce is an opportunity provider and a facilitator for our members. And on this slide, just to highlight, these are all of the activities that we do, and they all relate back to these 4 items, and those 4 items relate back to our mission statement. This slide is an example of the success that we've received with promoting different items. The By Brawley campaign, again, was recognized by the State Board of Equalization. Right next to it, we have some statistics or insights, as Facebook calls them, as to our success with promoting the cattle call events that we do. So you'll note Cattle Call Parade had 62,000 views, Mariachi Night 54,000 views, and Chili Cook-Off 20,000. So we're getting some attention there. Are we truly gaining attraction and exposure to Brawley? Yes, we are. Here I have outlined the estimated attendance numbers for our various community events. So that's what we have here. Total estimated attraction over the course of a year period is 48,000 people. This is almost doubling the population of Brawley. The cost of the promotional activities that the Chamber provides for Brawley in 2017 totaled $141,577. That's 3/4 of our budget, our yearly budget. But how does the city actually benefit from this? From our activities. Let's see here. There we go. When the Chamber performs activities that promote the city, and we can confidently show that we are attracting people to the city for community activities, then we are comfortable saying that those 48,000 people have an overflow of spending that will benefit at minimum 4 city tax categories. Let's look at them individually. Sales tax. Chamber events and functions attract a multitude of people ready to spend discretionary income. This gives a boost to the sales tax revenue. I think we can all agree on that point. Transient lodging taxes. Event attendees, business associates, families, and friends are all subject to transient lodging taxes when they stay in Brawley. And we can directly relate that to many activities that we do here in the community and for the community. Business license taxes. When we put on the events, we have many vendors. Over 350 vendors participated last year in chamber functions, and they are required to have business licenses. We process the business licenses in our office, and we directly pay that over to the city. Utility user tax. Through business attraction, we're able to confidently say that when we attract business to the area, that businesses are contributing to the utility user tax. So business sustainment and business attraction are key elements of growing this tax base. We're here today asking for 45% of the hotel tax. And this information is important because we're standing here requesting a tax revenue share model that will support the growth of our business community through the activities that we have discussed thus far and through additional areas that have been identified as untapped potential. We're requesting funds in the amount of 45% of the yearly calculated transient lodging tax. The big question is why, and that can be answered in many ways. First, the request for these funds is not an uncommon approach for many cities to achieve strategic milestones. Based on a Cal Chamber survey of 201 chambers throughout California, Nevada, and Arizona, 58% of chambers have an agreement for funding in this manner. Second, this tax is generated from the travelers that are spending the night in our city. Let's take a portion of that revenue and invest it back into the activities that are attracting folks to the city so that it can grow. Growth is the key to closing the gap we see now in our general fund. Lastly, the Chamber has been functioning fine without these funds. However, if we continue to do the same old thing, we'll continue to receive the same old results. So these funds, if invested in the Chamber, will not only pay themselves back, but they will return growth in all identified tax categories. Now that we have established and answered why, we can tackle the what. What will these funds be spent on? We have identified areas that are currently not fully serviced in the city, and understandably so. And we are proposing that these areas of untapped potential be serviced through this tax revenue share agreement. The primary activities fall under 2 main categories: tourism and business development. Tourism involves developing a tourism council that will establish and execute strategic goals for engaging tourists like the sand duners, snowbirds, rodeo enthusiasts, dove hunters, and salton sea enthusiasts. Business development involves developing a committee that will establish and execute strategic goals for engaging property owners, land developers, and business owners. Both of these categories, if approached in methodical and strategic ways, will produce additional revenues for the city in all 4 tax categories that we have identified. Here we have a simple and rough projection of what will happen if the council takes action today versus if the council takes no action. The first two columns reflect actual reported tax dollars for the transient lodging tax from fiscal year ending 2015 and 2016. The measured growth, the organic growth taking place, is calculated at 2%. If today the council decided not to invest in these activities and you choose to allow natural growth to happen, then we can project a constant 2% increase. After 4 years, you can see the cumulative dollars have increased right there with the 1.4. But if we take active steps to grow these funds, like we have outlined here, we can project that we will see an additional increase year after year of these funds, like a snowball effect. So first, we aim for an additional 5% to the 2% of natural growth. And we add another 5% of growth year after year. And at the end of the 4 years, you can see the cumulative growth value, and that it has increased more than just the 2%. Take the difference of the two activities, and now you have the return on the investment. Keep in mind that this is only one tax. We can assume that if the transient lodging tax is increasing, so will other categories such as the sales tax. Setting the stage for a 3-year effort is key to this plan. Here is what we can expect. The first year is spent in development and execution. Year 2 is spent in execution, and year 3 is spent monitoring and adjusting items as needed. I'm thankful that we've had the opportunity to collaborate over the last week and to speak with each individual council member and hear some of the feedback and the thoughts. And so I've put together some of the questions that I received and some of the answers to kind of help move us along with answering some of the unknowns. So how can we measure progress? Measuring progress is a collaborative effort and relies on efficient collection and reporting from city staff. Each of the two functions we have identified for untapped potential will increase the tax base. So we are able to quarterly and yearly check progress based on total collections at those points in time. Oops. We will never recoup the investment. Aside from the projection that we've shown, it's critical to keep in mind that inaction is not a solution to solving the general fund gap that we have. So this proposal is addressing the gap by saying we can increase business efforts in the city that will support the tax base. We can reach out to the tourism side and bring people in to close that gap through the different taxes. Another concern was we could just hire internally and do our own economic development. Why would we go with this plan? That's true, you can. And if that was a result of this conversation, that would be wonderful. However, the cost of an economic development specialist is going to start you anywhere between $100,000 to $120,000. It's not a position that can be done on its own, so most likely there will need to be additional staff to support that. And so now you're already looking at dollars that are beyond what we're asking for. The job duties would be limited by nature if it was through city employment. We can, on the private side, if we're investing on the private side to do these activities, we can do more with a smaller amount of dollars than what can be done in the city side. So funding the chamber will take away city jobs. City positions are critical, and we understand that. However, investing the funds into activities that are generating taxes so that growth can be accelerated is a path for growing funds and potentially fueling more jobs down the line. And the last concern we had was that private investment is already fueling economic development, so that then the chamber is not needed. And while this is true that economic development to an extent is happening with private investment currently, what we're seeing is infrastructure being built out, and we're seeing new buildings pop up, but the key is getting the right businesses to fill those spots. We can develop all day. If we don't have the right business attraction, or if we don't have a marketable community, we're not going to see the result that you're thinking will happen. So we're bridging a gap there with this proposal. Again, I do have two individuals who are also going to kind of round out the presentation, so I'll call Kathleen Lang up to talk a little bit about what we are working on together.
Thank you. Ms. Lang?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Dr. Kathleen Lang. My day job is California Health and Wellness, a Medi-Cal managed care company here in Imperial County. But like many of you, I wear many hats. I'm also a partner with the Brawley Chamber and sit as one of the directors on the board of directors for the chamber. I'm here speaking to you tonight primarily in my role as a member of the Imperial Valley Healthcare Steering Council. The purpose of our steering council is to provide direction to the local health authority and recommendations, not direction, I should take that back, recommendations to the local health authority concerning health care and wellness here in Imperial County. The focus of my comments in support of this request this evening are primarily speak to the work being done toward population health and the role that business has in the wellness of employees within a company. What we've been doing with Katie's leadership and partnership approach with many stakeholders is to develop a committee called a Partnership of Prevention, and we are looking to bringing together a wellness program toolkit that can be provided to businesses. We're starting in Brawley because that's the area of focus here. A toolkit that will help employers to maintain a healthy work staff. We've seen this model in many large companies. The company I work for also has a model along this line. It costs my company a lot of money. What the Brawley Chamber wants to do and is working towards, we're well into this process, is to provide something at no cost to the businesses in Brawley, so that they can learn what it means, they can educate their staff, they can have small incentive programs that will help to maintain the wellness of their work staff. We all know, or there's evidence base, that well work staff promotes business, grows business, and improves the overall quality of life within a community. And if through the Chamber's work we can partner up on this and work together as stakeholders with a common goal in this community, then that's something that can move healthcare forward, also meeting some of the goals of the local health authority. And because of the expertise that the Brawley Chamber and with Katie's leadership as our executive director, this is finally happening. And it's something that we've wanted to do for a few years now, but in talking with Katie and serving on the board of directors there, we've started to develop this plan and make it real. But there's obviously some work that goes along with that, and that this is part of Katie's concern as our director, is how to fund some of the work that needs to be done as far as promoting business and improving the economy. Just to wrap it up, I have an academic and professional background in public administration. I know that there's limitations on revenue. That's on the concern of every local government that I've ever worked in. But I also think, and I'm aware that the return on investment that is possible by partnering up with other entities is something that is worth your consideration. And so based on that, then I would ask for some careful consideration on the request that's before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lang.
Thank you.
And do we have Abraham snuck out? Okay. So I did have Abraham. I think he had to leave and take care of some other business. But at that time, that's the end of our presentation. So if you have any questions.
Well, thank you for your presentation. We certainly appreciate the time and effort, energy, and to include your board members and other ambassadors and guests. So thank you very much for coming out here and presenting. I do have a few questions with respect to the letter that we did receive for the request. Now, the request is for 45% of the collected yearly transient lodging tax, and it's a 3-year request, so that amounts to over almost $500,000 over the 3 years.
Correct.
And so I did look at the funding, if we can go back to the slide, it says funding positively impacts growth efforts. And just to get a better understanding of, is the first line, is that what its current projections at a 2% growth, and the bottom half is that the projected growth if we
yes,
fund
so
it?
exactly. So the top line is saying if we keep the organic growth that is happening, and we do nothing at this point, this is the organic growth that we're going to see year after year. The bottom line is saying now if we take these funds and we have targets that we can aim for, here's what we're projecting we can accomplish with some of the activities that we've outlined here.
Okay. The one item that stood out to me in this particular slide is the fact that if we were to fund this proposal, that's over $450,000. However, the difference between the 1.4 and 1.8 is only $400,000. So it actually would cost us more money to be able to do that.
So, and again, we're requesting the funds from one tax, but we're looking at a ripple effect with 4 different taxes. So will the investment return? Yes, it will, but it will return in a different form than what you're investing. And that's really what we've outlined here by going through each tax, that what we're proposing, these different actions, they will affect all 4 taxes. So as you see the transient lodging tax go up, theoretically we can then also see the other taxes go up. You never go into you don't go to a hotel and stay the night, and don't go eat somewhere the next morning, buy some gas if you're in the car, there's overflow that we're going to see that's going to come back to the community from this particular investment. The reason why we've gone after this tax specifically is because it's the most common model that we see between chambers and cities.
Thank you. I'll open it up to any other questions.
I have
comments?
a couple of questions. And maybe Rosanna, you can answer this. Is the transient lodging tax, is it in addition to the sales tax, or it is like a sales tax but for hospitality businesses?
It's an 8% that's assessed on our motel and hotel night stay.
Okay. So it basically would take the place of a sales tax if they could charge sales tax for a stay.
Correct. It is a set-aside specifically for overnight stays in RV parks, hotels, and motels.
Okay. And that's 8%?
Correct.
Okay. You know, what you were saying, Mayor Nava, about the amount that Katie's requesting being more than the projected extra, I think is a well-made point. And I wonder if I did the calculation on it, and it looks like that's closer to, if we were just to do dollar for dollar based on the projection, is closer to 38% rather than 45%. So maybe if we scale it back a little bit, it would be, something that we would have more of an appetite for.
Is there? Let me ask this question. I know your request is for 45% of the collected yearly transient lodging tax, and obviously your request is substantial, very substantial for the city to consider. And you've heard that we have our own constraints.
Sure.
So that's and I realize that you do point out that there is an increase in catacall, but that's not just the chamber. I mean, obviously there's Catacall Rodeo. There's other agencies that provide attraction out here, to include the Film Commission that also does their promotion, and that increases, in a very similar fashion. They also have their own measures, and very recently they came before us, and they attract about $1.4 million a year into the area, and a lot of the filming is produced in the North End, so they stay in Brawley. But my point is, there's a lot of things that contribute to Catacall. There's a lot of things that contribute to the fact that it's just a traditional event. It's been around for 55 years, so it's not just the chamber. Is there, and not to mention the fact that the city of Brawley also is a contributor to, as a member. We contribute $10,000. We also contribute other in-kind, whether that's city staff. We also, I think that the bleacher seats have also been part of the chamber's revenue, generating. So there's things that are done. My question, though, is there a more modest approach or a more modest request of the city to assist? I know that there's difficulty in sustaining the chamber, but I did look back.
Like I said in the presentation, this is not a request for funds to sustain the chamber. The chamber is sustaining. This is a investment. This is an investment into growing the business base that we have here, so that we can see the revenue come back to the general fund and close the gap. So we're proposing a gap closure through this avenue. It's an option to say we want to grow the tax base and grow what we have here in the community, and this is an option. We're not coming in front of council saying that the chamber is in dire need of funds. That's not the case. We are sustaining with our membership base. Through Catacall, yes, it is a collaborative effort, and everyone is key and essential to making that happen, and we are truly grateful to the city for their investment into that. With regard to things like the Film Commission, that's fantastic. The Film Commission, as you know, was housed under the El Centro Chamber and was a function of the chamber for many years until just recent. So we do understand the value of these activities, and that's why we have these sorts of things under the chamber, because it does directly relate to the market that we see, the market that we serve in terms of the community and the business community.
Well, but, there is a statement in the request that you made. It says, if these funds are not designated for chamber use, the level of service provided to the city will be severely impacted, and items that have been continuously provided to the community through the chamber could be affected in drastic ways. So I just want to make clarification on that statement.
Yeah, so what we're saying is that we're using these funds, we're directing these funds to these activities. If the funds are not chosen for these activities, we can sustain what we're doing, but the level at which we are working will diminish. We are not going to be enhanced at all. Our activities are not going to be enhanced at all if we don't focus more funds on what we're doing. What we're saying is we can do these bigger and better in terms of, if you want to narrow it down to the events, okay, we can do them bigger and better. We can streamline them. We can promote the community better and more efficiently. For example, our Buy Brawley campaign, that could have been very well developed, and we could have spent more time on that had we had the funds. So the potential is lacking. Could there potentially be activities that we are not able to sustain if we don't have the funds? Yeah, that's always a real possibility. It fluctuates with the market. If we're not supporting our businesses here in the community, how can we turn around and say sponsor all these events that are for the community benefit? And that's why we're coming on behalf of our members saying, hey, they've been stretched year after year for their dollars. Let's find another way of investing into these activities so that we don't have to rely solely on our businesses to make things happen in the community.
But, and going back to my comment, my question, is there a more, because trying to convince 5 council members to take away $450,000, $475,000 over a 3-year period, I think is a tall order. It's going to be very difficult, considering we have our own challenges.
What sounds better for you? What you're asking for a more modest approach? I'm giving you the approach that we've taken. What sounds better for you?
No, I'm looking at a dollar figure. Those are real dollars. I mean,
of course. Yeah, we understand that.
So let me ask the question though. Again, is there something, because you're looking at trying to enhance? Is there something where you can define, like, hey, look, this dollar amount, because you didn't describe a dollar amount, you described a percentage. So my question to you: is there a dollar amount where you would feel that some of the programs that you do have can be enhanced without?
So the reason why we've asked for a percentage versus asking for a dollar amount is so that the years where we are successful as a community in growing this tax base and we are seeing the money come back and the efforts being fruitful, we want to be able to take the additional and reinvest it and just continue that trend. So the purpose of the percentage versus just putting us in a hole of a dollar amount, if you're looking at the term of investment, it makes sense to take what's being earned and invest it right back into the activity.
Mr. Mayor, if I can speak also just on my own behalf, and I appreciated the time, Katie, that we spent. It's never enough time, but to kind of fully understand. Where I'm at with this is, first and foremost, I mean, everything that was shared with you, that was shared with us, in the public, I think is well noted. In this chamber, your staff, your ambassadors, your board, I think have really come together and have really delivered, quality work on everything that we're done. I'm very proud of that, and I'm probably speaking for most of the council members, if not all. But where I'm struggling a little bit is something like this. I would certainly need more time, and I express that as well, one-on-one. This is when I say it's a significant ask, I look at it as this is public monies. This is public. This is tax revenue. I get the nexus, and I agree with you. And I did a little bit of follow-up research and see that that's used. The other things I noticed in my own research that. There is a tendency where these are some of the larger cities. Not all. I get that. There's going to be comparables. But again, when you get in kind of to the trap of comparing yourself to, other cities, we have to also take and consider Brawley's uniqueness. And so what I'm taking out of this is, do I think there's more investment? And that's kind of interesting because our agenda is actually peppered with some risks and some investments we're looking to take. We talked about code enforcement a little bit earlier. We talked about downtown with this potential ad hoc committee, as well as the laser focus I think the council's has demonstrated not only year after year. So it's kind of like, the mayor's address kind of is our little victory lap as well. Thank you for that opportunity, for us to showcase that. So long story short, I think what you're finding is, this is, again, my opinion, I think there's some investment here to be made. I'm just not quite sure or convinced at this moment it's 45% of our TOT tax. That's what I'm struggling with. And there's absolutely no knock on the presentation that's been put forward. Actually, I very much appreciate this, and I want to build off of this if we can. So I think the conversation's now out there. The ask has been made. I myself would like certainly time to consider and maybe work through this to come up with something, and maybe the nexus is ultimately not, tourism and all that and the TOT tax. It might be maybe something with whether a mayor's suggesting, maybe it's a number, maybe we need to revisit our contribution. All of these things, as we've just struggled with the previous topics that we discussed as we're navigating the new next year's fiscal budget. So we have a lot to consider, but I think the Chamber's case is well made.
Sure, and I just want to just to comment on that is I totally understand the viewpoint, but as you know, and as you've been hearing in different meetings that you've attended, just most recent as we discussed with Yuma, that tourism is a focus. Tourism is an area where cities are turning their eyeglass to look at what can we have here, especially in our region because of the nature of our tourism. We are unique in Brawley. We are unique that right now Brawley currently is the only city that has a functioning chamber in the North County. We're unique in that in 2 weeks, Brawley, or actually next week, Brawley will be the only city that has a chamber that is functioning in the county at our level and capacity, and that includes with El Centro. So there's much to be said about the reputation, the amount of work, and the output that comes from the chamber and how that benefits the city. And so this request is not made lightly on our behalf. We don't want to, we understand it's public dollars.
I've certainly not said that. Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. I just said what I need time to understand and really fully consider this and really arrive at something I think that is going to make sense with all things considered. With that being said, I'm looking at this item, having the time that we've spent, and quite frankly, I'm going to say this, is that I have not had a tremendous amount of time, even previous to our engagement and soon thereafter, because that was only a few days ago, to feel comfortable to move tonight on something like this. So I just wanted to state that's where I'm at.
I was encouraged by the slide that Katie showed with the new member growth chart, because that showed me that
not as negative as one thinks.
That the chamber seems to be really pounding the pavement to make some stuff happen. That's where, I guess for me, that's where the percentage, as opposed to a set dollar amount, or percentage to me seems to motivate more activity. In that, if you know you're getting a percentage, it makes you work harder to cause the rest of the city to prosper through marketing for events or whatnot, to bring in more tourism. So it seems to me that a percentage would motivate the chamber to work even harder. I think 5% growth year after year is ambitious. I would hope that it could happen. And I would like to see for those dollars certainly more events, more community events, because I think that there is a dollar value even if money's not changed hands per se, but just bringing the community together, I think has a value to that. So I would love to see these dollars go toward more community events throughout the nicer part of the year, instead of just cattle call, though that is, it's a big win for the city of Raleigh. But those are my comments on it.
Yes, I would just like to say that I'm really impressed with your presentation.
Thank
and
you.
I had the opportunity to talk to Katie before her coming before us today. And I do see that there would be a great benefit for us to explore, or for you to have the opportunity to look into those other areas of opportunity such as tourism and business development, especially the tourism, as you have indicated. Because I've often wondered why a lot of the snowbirds go to Yuma instead of staying here in Brawley or some of the sand duners, because they don't really find anything else to do or anything of interest. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for us to grow in those areas, and I think that you and your team can surely help the city of Brawley with those. I'm kind of also with the amount, though, of the 45% of the actual total. I think is probably a tall order, in my opinion, but I'd really be willing to discuss, our budget and with the rest of the council and see how we could help support the Brawley Chamber.
Thank you.
And Sam,
As the representative of the city on the Chamber of Commerce Board, I've always been supportive of the Chamber. I've been really supportive of the Chamber in receiving the $10,000 that they do receive from the city. I have advocated for them to receive additional money on an ongoing basis, and part of, I think, the reduction in funds were due to a variety of different things several years ago, and it may be that now is the time to take another look at this. I am a little bit, and I shared that with Katie, a little bit concerned about the 45%. I think it is a concern of ours, and I think we would need to have additional discussion as it relates to our budget during our budget hearing process. I agree with Councilmember Wharton on that I think we need to talk about that. I think that is a tall order, as Norma did indicate here. And so, but I've always been very supportive of the Chamber, and I have no doubt that they do need additional funding. And I have no doubt that what they do has been very positive for the city of Brawley, Cattle Call, and the other events that I've seen that they operate. So I think at this point in time, I think it's something that the council has to discuss further. I think we'll talk about what we want to do. I do agree somewhat with Luke, Mr. Hamby, that a percentage is sometimes something that will encourage people to do more work and better things rather than a set amount. I know we have the $10,000. We do not even have a contract, I don't think, for the $10,000.
Yes, there is a contract.
There is a contract?
Yes.
Okay. And so there is a contract, and there are some goals in mind.
Maybe I should rephrase that and say there is a chamber contract.
There's a chamber
for
contract.
that is
yes,
agreed upon.
Correct. And so, but I think for a larger amount of money, we will be looking at contract issues, and we would be looking at what kind of percentage we might want to do, and whether that funding comes from the TOT or whether it comes from another source. I think that's something we'll have to look at during the budget process. We did, I think in the past, we had a pretty detailed contract with the Chamber, and now the Chamber indicates there is a contract for the $10,000 that they have. However,
right. So it might be helpful to recap a little bit of the history. And my apologies, Katie, I had hoped we could meet, so I didn't surprise you. I'm not sure if you have all these elements or not. I did have an opportunity to do a couple of things, including talk with all of the cities of the Valley and how they contribute to their chambers of commerce. So as shared earlier today, Brawley contributes $10,000 a year. Calexico contributes $5,000 per year. Calipatria covers rent and utilities for their chamber. El Centro contributes $3,000 per year, and was very clear that they don't charge for road closures associated with special events for which the chamber is the lead. Holtville covers the rent and utilities of the Chamber of Commerce, and Imperial is the only city that funds their chamber at the same rate that we do at $10,000 a year. But they also provide a location for those offices. I also did a 10-year look back, just trying to assemble the history as to when we were funding at higher levels. That was actually a fully fleshed out MOU between city and agency, and the chamber, and at times it also had a pass-through for the Brawley Economic Development Commission. So I did a 10-year look back. For the last 6 fiscal years, we funded the chamber at $10,000, and in 2012-13, which is that 6th year, it was clear that due to the elimination of the redevelopment agency, that the funding that had previously been provided to the chamber, there was a dramatic scale back. And in 12-13, the city contributed $3,000 for its city membership, and then $7,000 to specifically assist with enhancing website capability for the chamber. The Chamber of Commerce executive director at the time came forward and asked for the council's support. In fiscal year 11-12, the city funded the chamber at the level of $35,000 per year. In 2010-11, $60,000 per year. In 2009-10, $85,000 per year. And 2008-9, $95,000 per year. So that's only the 10-year look back. We then pulled from our accounts payable, where we were able in our system to do a look back, and that was an interesting process as well. I didn't have a chance to go through every single entry to simply make reference to membership, but over that period, as far back as 1997, we contributed or made payments in the total amount of $1,389,020.91 to the chamber. So I think it helps to at least give some perspective as to, it's very clear.
Yeah, and you know, it's a fine line, because as Donnie had mentioned earlier, we don't want to get into the habit of comparing. So we don't look at other cities comparing here locally, because none of the other chambers and cities have the relationship that we do. So we while we understand where all the chambers sit with their cities, we're fully aware of that. We do know that we're unique in that we're providing services that none of the other chambers are providing. So thank you for that. We do appreciate that. The history, going back with the chamber and noting that that was also encapsulating the Brawley Economic Development Commission. I can't speak to any of that because I wasn't here, and I'm not really concerned about that because that's past. That's not going to help us solve problems going forward. So I haven't taken that. While I'm fully aware of the history, I have not taken that as a point of this argument not being valid for going forward.
Is there any other comments or questions?
So one question, so if I were to go back and report to my members, what would be the correct response that I would give them from council in regards to this proposal?
Well, just based on the commentary at this point, I don't know if there's going to be support. It is an action item. It's a request for dedication of 45% of the transient occupancy tax. So it really is, we could provide staff direction or anything else, but we're not at that point yet, so.
Mr. Mayor, could I make I think I included in my comments, what I'd like to see happen is, first off, I do want a little bit more time for consideration, number one. But even as such, kind of taking in a little bit more information today in this meeting, maybe an appropriate time to kind of come back to this as council would be when we're at that part of the budget process. One of our workshops is focused on our contribution, specifically to the chamber. That gives us that time between now and then to obviously engage further staff, chamber as well, and maybe we can craft potentially, I don't know if it's going to be this, but a different solution. Or certainly whatever the level of support may be. But I think, with my concern would be more time to understand this. I think that gives us a time, so we're not walking away tonight without a solution. There's a point in time
The General Fund Workshop is April 23rd.
Is that when we address this, or is it the?
That's when basically the model is presented where it shows the gap, and council can give direction on how you'd like to address.
I think that would work. I mean, it gives some opportunity. But I would like to see if there's any members of the public that would have a comment on this particular topic. I know you have some guests here and members of the public that may have an opinion on the matter. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Eric Reyes, 1128 Court. We all appreciate and know the hard work the chamber does. It's built on volunteerism to begin with, though. As ambassadors are all unpaid volunteers. They're all good people. And it's an organization that has to do a lot with very little. And as such, the amount that they're asking for is just way too much to begin with. And it needs to be presented within the context of the whole budget. So you see where it's currently that tax is going towards the general fund. Therefore, it might impact other services that we desperately need, police, fire, parks and rec, and so on, that you're trying to make do as well. I think it's better within the context for them to make the argument within the context of the whole budget. So we say, and as he says, there is no other Chamber of Commerce in the Valley receiving anywhere near that type of amount of money. El Centro at one time used to be independent completely from the city. Now they get very little bit and some in-kind, obviously. But to go from 10,000 to basically 150,000 a year, that's a 15,000% increase in your budget. I mean, just that word alone, it's too much at one time without the context of the whole budget and where that's going to be coming from. Right now, the general fund, right? The tax is the general fund. And the question about the tax is one of the ones that we had advocated to actually be raised when you guys were looking to make funds. I don't think it was raised, was it?
No.
All right, this is a perfect time to help the chamber reach its goal. You need to look back and we're going to raise fees again. I guess they had a real tough lobby on you guys at the hotel lobby. Abraham must be a tough guy because you didn't raise it at the time. I think it's an opportunity for you to raise a fee on people passing through this town. We're going to continue to go through there. Abraham's a good friend of mine. He just won a contract. Has nothing to do with tourism. He just won a contract with a Salinas-based company, and they're there right now. It's 100% occupancy that we're staying at the Marriott. Previously, now are here in Brawley, much cheaper for them to stay here, and they still have the amenities of restaurant and so on. So it's all about marketing and hustling and so on. So I think 45% definitely way too much. It's just way too much. It's not advisable for you guys, even for the chamber, it's not advisable for them to ask that if they want support. You know, they can come back to the public and say, this is what we're doing, but, you know, I think, and within the context of the budget, and if you raise the fee so you're going to actually have more money coming in from that and maybe some other services, I would suggest to the chamber, if you're going to want that type of money, you're going to have your members sacrifice and raise your membership fees as well to meet the city, you know, part of the ways. And in particular, your vendor fees, keep some of that money. That's easily done. The city license fee, maybe you can work into a fee for Chamber of Commerce events. There's just ideas, as I was listening, that kind of fills that gap as well, and a much smaller percentage that you would give them, or a fixed amount per year. More you could be able to give them, but like I said, obviously those 58% of the cities do that. This reminds me of redevelopment tax they wanted to do here, and they were the presenter who's going to sell the bonds compared Brawley to look what the city of San Diego did with the downtown quarter. It was, you know, you can't compare. It's that type of issue here also. A lot of those cities that have occupancy taxes that make tons of money, and they're able to pass that on to the chambers to continue that tourism and so on. Like I said, it's not a knock on the chamber. They do a great job. I think they do deserve more, just not that amount, and be more creative as to how to reach it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. And that actually brought up an interesting topic, and I know I've discussed this before, but, you know, it had been thought of by previous councils, and I'm not sure if this council's discussed it or not, but I can't recall, but there had been some consideration for raising the occupancy, transit occupancy tax, and so that may be a method. However, I know that there are some restrictions on how that has to be implemented. Can you please provide some input on that?
So pursuant to the California Constitution, whenever the city council raises a tax, it has to put it to the voters. And the only time you can put an issue like that to the voters is when the council members themselves are also up for re-election. So the next time a council member is up for re-election is 2020. So no taxes are going to get raised in Brawley until 2020.
And if there was a specific tax, for example, let's say there was a 3% increase in the transit occupancy tax, could that be directed towards a particular?
If it can, but if it's directed, then when it goes to the voters, it has to pass by a 2/3 majority. If it's a general tax, then it's just a simple majority. So the Constitution makes it very difficult to raise taxes. Very difficult. Except for the state legislature seems to do it all the time, but city councils can't.
Sure. Well, that's just something to consider, I think, for future, while we, you know, obviously address this other topic. Is there anyone else from the member of the public who would like to make a public comment on this particular item?
I think a general comment is just I think we're on the lower end of the spectrum too for TOT tax, correct? I can't say that for 100% certain, but
It's going to increase, right?
Imperial had it on a ballot in the last.
What's their levels? Do we know? Do we know what their levels are?
I can check it. I want to say it's 10 1/4. in El Centro?
It's quite commonly in the double digits, and if you get into the bigger cities, it gets even higher than that. I mean, upwards of 15%.
It's funny to me that a tax like that wouldn't pass because the people that vote for it are not the people that pay it.
Right.
I think the year that it was on the city of Imperial's ballot, there were several items, and there was perhaps some confusion among the voters. They were trying to get
There's
it
always
in.
the vote no.
There was a desire to have
It's
it.
apparently the reason why the charters are not in San Diego.
Just to leave us all, so we're fully aware of what we're asking, is that the tax dollars brought in by people visiting the city, that we take that money and reinvest it back into the activity for which they are visiting. So tourism, promoting the community events, the business affairs that we have going on with the business meetings, so on and so forth. We're saying take the money that they're paying the tax and reinvest it back into those activities. So thank you for the comments, Mr. Reyes, but I think there is a legitimate reason and validity to asking to take those funds and reinvest them back into the activity.
Thank you.
Mayor Nava, I got the information on the city of El Centro. Their ballot measure allowed them to move from a 10% to a 13%, with an anticipated annual revenue of $480,000 per year in TOT.
So,
If you don't mind, I would just like to say, I would be in favor of it at a somewhat reduced rate, something more in line with what she projected as an increase in activity, something more along the 35 to 38% of the TOT rather than the 45.
Well, I think it's important for everyone to understand. I think with this particular topic, because it is such a substantial amount, we really do need to consider this within our budget discussions. That's the important aspect of it, because we're already facing a deficit within the fact that, and I shouldn't use that word necessarily because we're using our reserve account. However, when we're considering removing
$150,000 or so from the use in the general fund, that can impact a lot of services. So if we're going to be doing that, we have to consider that we may need to cut down on a position, and we may need to do other things that could impact us. So those are the things I think are very important to consider. And I know that that's not always a top of mind for everyone to understand, but that's why I think it's important to revisit this topic at our budget workshop, and it sounds like that's what the council is desiring. Is there any other proposed other than to revisit the topic? I don't think we've shut the door on this item. It just, I think, needs to be considered very carefully. So it just one of those items. So with respect to a message back to your membership, if you wish to do that, it would just to engage themselves along with City Council at our next budget discussion. So this can be considered.
Mayor Nava, just as an item of note, for the kickoff to our budget process for the general fund will be the acknowledgement that the gap that we offset last year was just shy of $400,000 plus our $133,000 regional board payment. So we have one more payment remaining. We know no matter what, if no other costs change for the city, we would be at well over $500,000 of a deficit just to retain the existing structure that we have with no other changes in the cost of doing business.
Revenues versus expenditures.
With that, I should add that city councils can declare an urgency and have a special election on a tax. So it's not that you can't possibly raise taxes until 2020, but that would be the normal course.
Right. Would that fall into that category, though, as an emergency item?
I think if an urgency were to close a budget deficit, that would be a lot less subject to challenge.
I understand. That's good information. Good information. All right, so we'll table that item for inclusion into our general fund discussion, and that will take place on April 24th. Yes, April 24th, correct? All right.
23rd.
Excuse me, 23rd. My apologies. April 23rd. At 5 p.m. here at the council chambers. Okay. So April 23rd, that's a Monday at 5 p.m. So, again, thank you, Katie and Chamber of Commerce directors and ambassadors. We will revisit that topic. Again, I know there's a lot of commentary from the council here, and, it's a substantial request. However, it will be considered at that time, and we'll discuss it then. Thank you. Moving on to the agenda, we have regular business item 5G, request for sponsorship of MAG Coalition Sneaker Ball on April 14th, 2018, at Gobi's Restaurant by Yulil Alonso Garza, founder. And there's backup material on pages 76 and 78.
She's not here.
She's not here.
Is there a desire on council's behalf to help with this particular event?
What I might suggest is what we do what we have traditionally done for the other events, and that's if people are interested in going up on behalf of the council and the city, that we pay for their ticket to go, and we consider that to be our donation to the event. And so we either buy a table as a council if enough people are slated to go, or else we buy individual tickets, and that would be my suggestion.
All right, and if obviously if the there is some savings if we buy a table of 8, but we would need to make sure that there's enough people to fill that table. If we're
There's like 3, there's some law enforcement.
On that particular day?
Three things on
that day?
Things on that day.
There's competing events.
There's
so
competing events.
It might be best.
I wouldn't be available. I don't know if you want to
I think
pull us
probably
now,
individual tickets would probably be the best way to go. And I think we can give direction to
Okay.
staff for that, can't we? And we don't have to take it.
Very well. Is everybody all right with that?
Yes.
All right.
I won't be attending.
Next item on the agenda is departmental reports, monthly staff report, prepared by Shirley Bonias.
Honorable Mayor, Council Member Shirley Bonias, Personnel and Risk Management. Page 79 of your agenda is the April report. Couple highlights. As we stated earlier today, the building inspector hopefully is in the final stages, and we should have a decision by Friday. The water treatment plant, going down to Public Works, the water treatment plant maintenance worker cleared backgrounds, cleared everything. His hire date will be April 17th. So yay, we get to take one off of the list. We have 2 dispatchers and backgrounds. I know that's a key position to fill. And we are going out for interviews again on police officers. Backgrounds are not progressing as we would like them to progress. The library page, library aide, and part-time supervisors, which are all on the lower portion of your report. They're all part-time positions. Their interviews will be this Friday, so that will allow the library to get fully staffed on their part-time staff. Please keep in mind part-time staff don't have merit increases. They only get sick leave as by law. There's no vacation time. There's no CalPERS expense. Okay. Any questions that I'll be happy to answer? Yes, sir.
Ms. Bonias, on the topic of the police officers and the backgrounds, have we been successful? Do we have any potential recruits? I know they're holding, for the first time, I think forever or a long time, a level 1 academy at IAC.
Yes, sir.
So
We're
I don't
hopeful
know.
about candidates.
Are we? Yeah. The smile maybe answers the question, but I just want to see if
I don't think Chief was anticipating coming up, but Chief, could you come up?
Chief. He's always smiling. Kelly Brown, interim chief of police. We currently have 2 people in backgrounds. We anticipate extending a conditional job offer tomorrow on one of those, and hopefully next week a second. So currently we're looking at filling 3 vacancies, and we're waiting to find out from the schools what the plan of direction is on that. So,
and they're current
they are not
academy
currently
cadets, or
they're not currently enrolled in the academy. They are both academy graduates. The local academy is expected to graduate a level 1 academy in June. So as we move closer to the new fiscal year, with any anticipated openings, we can look to that class.
Okay.
And, Interim Chief Brown, could you please touch on your involvement with the academy and your hoped for identification of talent?
So I have signed up to be a scenario evaluator at the academy. So I will actually get to see the cadets in action, going through scenario-based training and evaluating them. That will give me a first-hand knowledge of, the potential candidates and who would be a good fit for our department.
Yeah. We didn't blow your cover, did we?
No.
No. That's right.
No, not at all.
Good. I know it can be competitive, fantastic, and I guess furthermore there could be candidates out of that also could
maybe as a bridge, start with the reserve program as well.
Correct.
Potentially. So, okay. Very good. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, record of building permits and your backup material for your review. If you have any questions, please ask.
We have a nice unexpected attendee, which is Oscar Escalante tonight. He's obviously available to answer any questions. Normally, Gordon attends our city council meetings, but Gordon's on vacation this week.
Mr. Oscar Escalante, would you like to add anything to your report?
It's a long list.
No, I have nothing further to add to anything. If you
Perfect.
have any questions.
I think we're good.
I think it's a long list.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Page and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did see some construction taking place
Yes.
throughout the city today with the ADA bus shelter improvement, so
Right.
that's good. You know, so that's good.
They're all setting those up.
Thank you. All right, so next is city council member reports. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, we do have and he's
Mr.
back there. I
Kelly
think
and,
he's.
Mr. Kelly and
report
the
from
might
Mr.
be,
Kelly.
He's been awful quiet.
No,
tonight.
he's
I don't
posting
know.
on Facebook and how much he enjoys being here. Supervisor Kelly, would you like to come up and share your thoughts
Share your thoughts.
on the
Share
transit
your
Give us some
occupancy
good
tax?
news.
Give us some good news. Yeah.
Any
Well, they're gonna
idea on
draw
what we can do
lotteries
with the
for
TOT?
They're going to do a lottery.
We
here
need water.
soon.
We need money.
We need money.
Money.
You got any money? You got your visa?
Mayor, Council, Ryan Kelly, 448 Russell Road. Roseanne, I could have saved you a lot of time. You should just call me. I would have told you all that history on the change.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we all know some of it.
I might have gotten the years wrong, but I would have had dollar amounts. For the County of Imperial, some of the updates. Last week, the county, two supervisors met with two supervisors from Riverside County. We had a meeting in regards to path forward on the Salton Sea, MOUs being developed between the two counties on a plan and consideration for IFD in both counties along the shoreline. That should be coming back towards the end of the month, and we will take that to the other member agencies of the Salton Sea Authority to see if they'll sign on. But regardless, it will be shared with the state. It will be our preferred, and you've seen this. It is the perimeter lake plan. So we will be bringing that to the state as the medium range solution for the Salton Sea.
IFD.
Infrastructure Facility District. So there's a bill that passed a few years ago allowing an enhanced infrastructure facility district. In the 90s, Senator Kelly, no relation.
Different Kelly.
No relation.
Is that your next ambition?
Dave Kelly from Temecula area.
All right, cool.
He sponsored a bill that was passed. It created an IFD for Salton Sea, but it was never executed. So there are a couple of avenues to create it. It's basically a redevelopment. The tax increment can be used for any of the improvements, infrastructure for the Salton Sea. We will not be taking a liability for the state of California. All the improvements projects will be continually the responsibility of the state of California. But any of the infrastructure to be able to service or as we develop the perimeter lake, some commercial development, residential and industrial, roads, utilities, things like that. That's where the IFD monies would be used.
Okay.
Beyond that, I don't have anything
You've
else.
got a
to
lottery,
share.
don't you, coming up?
Oh, marijuana
I saw something, a
lottery.
marijuana lottery coming up. I thought
Yeah,
maybe
that's
you'd want to
true.
report on that.
We had 26 applications. 10 of them were for 10 of them were for recreational delivery service. I believe only one for manufacturing, 2 for cultivation, and the rest of them were for the single-site dispensary location.
That medical or recreational?
That's medical.
Medical.
So in our ordinance, we only allowed one medicinal marijuana dispensary in the county unincorporated.
Okay.
Marijuana lottery. That's going to be a slow
It's a
process,
lottery.
huh?
It's a lottery, yeah.
It'll be a slow process. All right.
Supervisor
Thank you.
Kelly was one of the, just out of curiosity, is Supervisor Perez one of the other, the Riverside? I figured that he would obviously very well acquainted with the
Mary
topic.
and Ashley as well.
Nice. Very good.
Should mention you look good.
I feel good.
Yeah, you look good.
I was feeling a little tired back there, though.
Yeah? Yeah.
I was resting my head.
I know. You look good, though. Good job. Good job. Thank you. All right. So, City Council member reports. Today we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Donnie Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This might be out of order, but did have the opportunity to kind of lead and attend our California League of Cities division meeting that was held at Inferno. Always great to be the host city as well with the comments, and we got to hear a presentation on the CalPERS State of the Union. So, as most can imagine, that's not the most exciting topic and the most invigorating, but yet extremely important to the liability of many of our cities, counties, and our public employees. So, also attended and played host again on kind of what I consider my day job at the Imperial Chamber Mega Mixer. Is very proud to see the entire Raleigh City Council in attendance, and I think it was a great event. 200 plus attended, and had the great honor of the SCAG board / delegation come by and spend some quality time there interacting with what I like considering, kind of our general public. So well attended from all ends of the valley. Also, I attended, and I think it was their first annual, hopefully they do it again, the Ag Expo. Went to the dinner on a Friday night, and I think there was other things going on, so I did attend that with my wife, and I was pleased that I did. It was definitely a kickoff of an interesting and I think hopefully in the future productive exposition that I hope grows and really shows and showcases Imperial Valley Ag. Last but not least, I do want to mention, got a nice photograph. I think the mayor shared it as well around a little bit. I'm hoping the rest of council saw it, but one of our Reach aircraft was coming back home here at the Brawley Airport and took a picture of our new lighting project as they were coming back in at night. And let me tell you, LED does make a difference. Not only is it been upgraded, but if you didn't know better, you would, might almost look like it's one of the smaller runways at LAX or something. So it's very impressive. Again, a completion of another great project. What a great finishing touch to what's really being a fantastic airport as far as one of our gateways for business and commerce. Speaking of business development, so it's something that we should incorporate in all that we say when we're attracting business, whatever into town that business is coming. I've had several engagements, more than a couple, reference the airport and the fixed base operation, and I know we barely mentioned that last time, but I just want to put that out there as the council report. There are interested parties, interested businesses, and I'm very pleased to report, as somebody that obviously has been a user and someone that's very proud of our airport. I know our council is, that all that investment is really starting to move forward and pay off with some new business and potentially new aircraft wanting to base itself there. So that is my report, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much for your report. And we'll go to Council Member Kastner Howdy.
Okay. Well, I did attend a couple of the same events that our Mayor Pro Tem Wharton attended. I was available to attend the SCAG dinner with the SCAG board members after the REACH event, and I did have the opportunity to network and talk to them as we were sitting. It kind of went longer than we anticipated because a lot of them were doing the helicopter ride. So, but that was great. They all enjoyed it. They were all very complimentary of Brawley and Imperial and the whole Imperial County, and said that this is their favorite county. And I don't know if they're just saying that, but they said this was their favorite county. So we'll take that. We also attended, I'm not sure if it was in this 2-week period, was it in the 2-week period that we had the Employee Award recognition luncheon? Okay, that was right after our last meeting, and so that was a very nice event. Thank you to the committee that put that on, and you did an outstanding job, and I want to thank all our employees for their hard work and dedication You really deserve that and much more. But it was a great food, and everything was fantastic. And next time I'm not listening to you guys, though, about wearing my T-shirt or whatever, because I was the only one that wore it. So, and then I just have to share this for those that weren't there, that I really thought that there was going to be a lot more Raider fans among the
There weren't very many.
among the Brawley employees, City of Brawley employees. But anyway,
thank you, Brawley
I wore my
employees.
Raider shirt.
You got like 2 claps. I
You had
think,
like
you know,
got 2 claps.
I really expected a lot more. I did.
Yeah.
I backed you up. I backed you
Yeah,
up.
so there's a couple of us that are Raider fans here on the
Absolutely.
council. On the 23rd, when Mayor Pro Tem Warden attended the Ag dinner, most of us actually attended, I think, the Brawley Main Street rally here at the Inferno, and we were very pleased to support that. It was an individual that decided to put this on to get everybody in the city, kind of rallied to promote our downtown businesses. And he tried, you could tell that he worked really, really hard at this. He had people there that were showing the different things that they have in their stores. Some of them were selling, and some of them just had them there for display. And then he also had performers. He had a rock band playing later that evening, and he had a real talented guitar player, by the way. I've been around musicians for a long time, so I have to say that was a real talented guitar player. I think that the turnout, I was real happy to see that the city supported it, and so did the chamber. There was quite a few chamber members there. I was a little disappointed with the turnout, though, because I think with all the Facebook postings and signs that he put out, I really expected a bigger turnout. So, again, that's one of the things, I guess, that we as a city and the Brawley Chamber and we have to work on encouraging our community to engage in these activities, because they're a lot of fun and there's a lot to offer. And then again, I did, along with Sam, I attended the Brawley Chamber Board meeting just to get a little bit more informed about what the Chamber does and how we can assist and how they can assist us. And other than that, I did my usual, had a very nice Easter weekend celebration for my daughter with a lot of her friends, so that was really nice. It was a double celebration of Easter and then my daughter's health. So real thankful for all her friends and family that supported her. And then also took the time to just go and visit some of the businesses in downtown and look at the areas that we've been discussing about that we need to address in our city. And that's about it.
Thank you for your report. And next, Councilmember Couchman.
Okay. I attended the REACH event, very nice event, and you guys both did a good job with that, and all your crew and everybody else that was there. I'm a satisfied customer of REACH, so it's only appropriate that I was there. I didn't stay long because my wife said I had to go home, but other than that, I was okay. Yeah. And then Energy Summit, I worked the Energy Summit on behalf of 8 Minute Energy, and also out there as a city rep, and it was a really pretty neat event, and quite a bit of attendance, and we got a lot of networking done, and there's some projects that are moving forward, and an emphasis, I think, on geothermal and solar, and not so much wind, but I mean the geothermal and solar, I think, are moving forward. A lot of talk about storage of energy at that event. The Brawley event at Inferno, I briefly attended that. I got caught up in a family wedding, and I apologize for missing some of those events, but I had a nephew got married, and so I had to attend that. So, and there was like a Friday and Saturday, so it kind of curtailed some of my city activities. But Lalo's was catering from the city of Brawley for the Friday event, and that went very, very well. A chamber meeting, I attended the chamber meeting with Norma, and we discussed the request of funding from them and all of those kinds of issues, and gave them an update on the city of Brawley. I also attended the Easter egg hunt at Pat Williams Park, a very neat event. A lot of kids, very well attended. I want to give a shout out to Parks and Rec, Fire Department, Public Works, Animal Control. The Animal Control officers out there to pick up the rattlesnakes.
Or to
any
control
stray,
the Easter
any
Bunny?
stray dogs and the Easter Bunny.
Yeah.
They were all
Yeah,
out
yeah.
there to control the Easter Bunny. And he
Were
did
you
a fine
Were
job.
you the Easter Bunny?
No, I was not the Easter Bunny. I would never want to be the Easter Bunny. The Easter Bunny does a great job, but it's hot inside that Easter Bunny suit, so to speak. And I think the Easter Bunny suffers. So, but we did have people donating stuff to that, and I think all the kids enjoyed it. And Ruby was over there with all her children, and they had a ton of goodies.
With all her children.
I ate half their candy, but only because they offered it to me. You know? No, I had to ask it. And I went to the employee recognition lunch, and certainly that was a great event. And a shout out to all the Brawley employees. I did go by the construction where they were putting in the new bus sheds today, and did a television interview over there. And so shout out to Public Works on that. I think Alan was out there, and the crew that were doing that for the contractor. And they're doing, they're getting it all together, and that's going in as we speak. And so that's a great thing for Brawley. And with that, that's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Cashman. Yeah, I'll get that. Councilmember Hamby, here, just leave it open.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended most of the events that the rest of council did throughout the last few weeks. The League of California Cities meeting and dinner, the Main Street rally, the Reach event. I also provided some music at the Ag Expo on the Saturday event, and as well as a couple other classical music concerts throughout the weekend. Let's see. I think that was it for events. And then I had some interaction with the public, with some community members and business owners about some concerns for downtown, concerning the dumpsters at the North and South Plaza Parks, which I think is actually an item that's been called out in one of the downtown specific plan renderings. Or
was it the state of the dumpsters or wanting them enclosed?
yeah, I want get rid of, move them somewhere because they're an eyesore and they smell bad, that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's one thing. Someone brought up an issue about weeds around shrubs and trees near the library, and I said that would probably be taken care of very soon. Let's see. I had a question, Rosanna, about the disadvantaged community tree program. We talked about that a month or so ago. Is there any progress on that?
Not at this time. We sat down, the city of Raleigh sat with the city of El Centro. El Centro is the primary grantee.
Right.
So where we left it is El Centro will be forwarding to the city of Raleigh a copy of an MOU, and we'll work on a draft together with reference to the future plans. I'm sure it will take likely a 24-month time frame to fully realize that program. There are many different elements to it, including a stewardship education piece, and so we did target, I can get to the summary, the months that we were targeting for a planting. There'll be an Arbor Day event that they're hoping the city will join with El Centro and kicking off in El Centro, and then they would like to plan subsequent days where we work with the engaged citizenry to plant a number of locations.
Okay.
So there's a lot of program elements that are just in the process of being sorted between El Centro and the entity that awarded the funds, and then we're sub-recipients.
Okay. I think you had sent us some documentation about a county solar mitigation fund.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe Mr. Kelly can talk a little bit about that. But I'm just wondering if we know the process for obtaining some of those funds, or if it's an automatic, we will receive a certain allotment from it.
I don't believe it's a set. I think I can go back and revisit the guidelines. I believe I sent council the link, and the library was looking at packaging a project that we've been trying to get outside resources for.
Okay.
I don't know, Marjo, would you like to speak to that for a moment? but it's a competitive process, so there's a set aside for certain types of programs.
There will be no more than $1 million given out.
Total for the county, right?
Marjo Mello getting to be the librarian again. We're looking at trying to get the senior center with a direct point-to-point wireless connection so that they have a really high bandwidth for computer access over there. And the whole project is about $35,000, which would include a pole and the equipment that would be placed on the top of the police department straight over to the senior center. And it would include some equipment for seniors that would be much more ADA compatible, where it's easier to increase the font size, where if anybody has a hand problem and a mouse doesn't work, there's rollerball things, there's joysticks, there's all kinds of other things that we can look at. And then also integrating part of that into our adult literacy program, because part of what we offer is basic computer classes, because that's one of the goals that can be with learning to read English better. With that grant, we can also work on learning to use computers. So we would also work with having staff over there a couple times a week for a couple of hours to work with people individually to see what we can do to help them move along. We have how to keyboard programs, how to use mouse programs, and things like that. So that's what we were looking at. And I think our $35,000 would probably be a drop of the $1 million. That are applying. Oh, well, that's $350,000. So we're well, my math is really bad today. $3.5 million. But that's one of the projects that we've tried a couple different ways to get the money. So that's the one I want to try again. Good. So, and we love our seniors too.
Yes.
And thank you for awarding the contract to work on their building.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Marjo.
Any other items?
I know we're kind of bypassing Brawley's 110th birthday this year, or seems like maybe. But I think maybe next year we should plan for 111th birthday celebration, one, because it's different than what everyone else is doing. Two, because we have part of Highway 111 in our city limits. And I think if we would, April 6th, from what I understand, is the
official
birth date. So I think it could be celebrated as Brawley Day. It would be an excellent way to revive community spirit and civic mindedness.
111 on 111.
That's
there
right.
We go. That was the last time I did the essentially ribbon cutting at 111. That was interesting. Go ahead.
I was just going to say about that $1 million solar mitigation fund. I think if I've done the math right, Brawley contains or has around it about 17% of the valley's population. So I would hope that maybe we could wrangle for 17% of that fund.
Remember that, right?
That's it for me.
It's not 45, it's only 17.
Isn't that a better number?
Just for the sake of time, everybody, I obviously attended many of the same events, from employee recognition, luncheons. So thank you to all staff, League of Cities, Brawley Main Street Rally. One item that I would like to include is that at Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, I did present to the board just a very quick 10-minute update on city activity. And so that was basically the mayor's address, just very condensed. Unfortunately, there wasn't a quorum that day, and I believe that they had said something like that hadn't occurred in about 10 years. So, it's unfortunate, but it was still attended by Mr. Kelly back there as an employee of Pioneers, and it still got a good message out to the public, so very good. Also attended the SCAG Dinner Reach event. But I would like to add an item. It was a press release that just came before city staff and local media outlets, and it's from the Naval Air Facility in El Centro. There was an incident today at approximately 2:24 involving a single helicopter north of Plaster City today. So there's the press communication from their information officer, and it just, they do express, our thoughts and prayers go out to the brave service members and their families affected by this incident. So if you can just keep them in your thoughts and prayers as well, it's likely going to be an event that's covered nationwide, I would imagine, but, just keep them in your thoughts and prayers, so.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, so thank you again. I'll conclude my report at that point. There's some other things that have occurred, but I'll move forward. So, city manager's report.
I'll try to go through quickly. Fixed base operator, we're hoping to get the solicitation for a new operator out later this month. That is our target and hope. We are in the process of preparing a takeoff of the CalPERS presentation that was made at the League, and specifically looking to evaluate kind of where we are from a funded and unfunded liability standpoint, and where we're projecting next year's contribution rates to go. Hoping that we can build on the education piece from the League of Cities content. Staff and I have been asked to make a presentation to the Imperial Valley Board of Realtors. Just came in today. So Gordon and I are tentatively scheduled for next Wednesday. They're very interested in understanding where our building permits are being pulled, where the activity is. It's kind of interesting talking to the Board of Realtors representative. He said that as he's polled his membership, the content that they enjoy most is hearing from cities what is going on in terms of housing starts and commercial starts.
Mhm.
So we were just there less than a year ago, and we'll do a refresh on our content and attend that meeting at Ricochet next week. Want to also touch on a couple of other things. NOCA, Mr. Jay Kruger was in yesterday on behalf of NOCA. It appears there's some interest in looking at a potential special event to take place along the 6th Street corridor, so exactly where Lalo's and Sylvia's Treasures is located, between Main and possibly up to the intersection on G, and looking at ways to make it festive and welcoming for an outdoor art-based event. So was excited to look at that prospect. We've had a couple of parties come forward expressing interest, so I'm guessing we're going to see that develop. And as soon as we have that initial evaluation of how to deal with traffic safety, we'll have kind of the formula in place for future events that might be a fit in that area. Want to also note that today the City of El Centro distributed to all local agencies a release with reference to their FCC complaint against Charter Communications, and they are actively requesting that all agencies in the Valley weigh in a comment letter, and they're urging the City of Brawley to do so or consider taking action in that area. And last but not least, late in the day today, I received a communication from Assembly Member Garcia's office asking for the city to consider a letter of support for AB 2208. It looks like the turnaround times are more aggressive than the council time frame. So what I thought I would do is just give you a quick summary, and if it's something of interest, if staff direction is to move forward, I can move forward with preparation. It says AB 2208 will make it easier to reliably integrate higher amounts of renewable energy generation into the grid by requiring the procurement of grid balancing renewables such as geothermal and bioenergy. This bill will keep bioenergy facilities open to continue accepting wood waste that is thin from forests and shrublands to reduce wildfire risks, and it will protect high-quality renewable jobs and tax revenues in low-income and rural communities. Attached to the request for a support letter was a copy of an IID Imperial County joint letter of support. It has a watermark for draft. I'm not sure whether or not it was on the board agenda today. It was. So it is an item that the Board of Supervisors is providing a letter of support for, and if the council is open to it, I would be happy to work on submitting, getting a final letter submitted.
Any interest in showing support for that particular item?
Yes.
Yeah?
I read through it earlier.
Better
and I
mix
think so.
geothermal, and geothermal is supposed to work.
Any opposition?
I think
No? Yeah.
Thank you. Also, just one quick buttoning up an item that has been before the council. I am joining with staff in a stakeholder meeting.
April
with
13th.
April 13th with CoLab representatives as a convener, and I hope to have the list of attendees in advance of that.
Good.
That's where we're headed, and we'll give them an update on where we are with our citywide roadway projects and future plans for that area.
Thank you. City Attorney's report.
Working on a lot of stuff. It's not very exciting, so I'll spare it.
City. Thank you. City Clerk's report.
A reminder of Thursday's mixer at Patty's on the Rocks.
It's been canceled.
It
Oh,
has
it's been
been
canceled, yeah.
And you sent us the cancellation, so. Yeah.
I think the chamber told us that it had
The
been
chamber,
canceled.
yeah.
No
Okay.
further notice.
And then Saturday's Anthony Garcia's
5K,
Yes.
2K, walk run.
the Cesar Chavez event. And then also, George is the only one that has responded to this Mayor Summit, the Calexico. If anybody else is interested.
April
let me
13th.
know. George, or-
Right.
George is the mayor.
George is the mayor. Right, but it's open to anybody here, so.
The Borders Mayor
Yeah.
Summit?
Yeah.
It's good if you can make it.
If you can make it, it's good.
We don't want to get in your
You're a
way.
good rep for us.
No. It's not good for that. It's good for
We don't want
meeting
to
others.
let you get in
Uh-huh.
your way. We don't
Yeah.
want to get in
Okay.
your way.
All right, thank you. We'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much for your participation. Tonight's meeting adjourned to Tuesday, April 17th. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I just wonder who.
Interesting. Well, that,
So who's going to be in
I
the
think
stakeholder
we
meeting?
found out at
That's all he said.
Okay, thank God. I hope so. I knew those were reports. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You have to ask Rosanna. I'm not. I haven't been asked to do it.
I think Donnie was.
Are you the stakeholder meeting for 111? Are you part of that?
but I will.
You're not. Okay. I don't think she's asked.
I just was wondering.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey.
How are you? Nice to see you again. Don't forget about me, okay?
How you been, buddy?
What we talked about.
How you been, man? Yes, sir.
Sponsorship with 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 sponsorship